Hello everyone, I'm Nini FC and this is Blue Lions TV, and today I'm bringing you guys another Chelsea live stream. Just a quick reminder, if anyone wants any questions answered in this live stream, super chats only. Of course, you understand that if we do go through your questions in the comment section, we'd be here for 10 hours, 10 days, who knows how long. But anyway, I'm bringing you guys a special guest in Joe Tweedie. Now, I did give you guys a lot of time to read his recent article that he released yesterday. Amazing, very detailed, and really breaks down exactly why we've become the club we are today. So that was in the description for last night's video, and it's in the community tab. For anyone that wants to quickly touch up on things, obviously go to the community tab now and you'll see a link there. But yeah, Joe Tweedie is going to be my guest again today for today's live stream. And yeah, Joe, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Joe Tweedie. You can find me on various kind of websites, and yeah, just generally one of the people that sort of does quite a bit of writing around Chelsea, at least on social media.
Perfect. And yeah, probably the first question to ask you was, what actually inspired you to write the article? Was it frustrations? Did you plan on writing this for a while? Was it in the works for a long time, or did you just think it was the right time to release something?
Kind of a bit of all of that, to be honest. I think I often look at the club, and just probably by my nature and probably more to do with my working life, I do try and think about how things can be improved, and looking at kind of the sort of spending in the summer and the kind of the sort of caliber of players that we started to not be able to attract. It's sort of thinking about how can the club kind of claw back to sort of that European top table. And I think one of the things I touched on was we're not remotely financially dominant anymore, so we kind of have to look for a slightly different way of doing things. And I think the main thing I was looking at is, okay, what's Chelsea's best quality? And I think really you'd have to say player production. The amount of top quality young players that we produce is got to be one of the top things that the club does. So how do we then obviously try and extract maximum value out of those players? And yeah, it kind of came from that, really. So yeah, a bit of a combination of frustration. A lot of people were maybe fairly happy with how the season's going. I think, again, if you look kind of beyond the very simple take of we're third in the league, we're still in the Champions League, etc. I think some of the kind of benchmarks this season, I think we're 15, 16 points worse off in like-for-like fixtures. We were so in control of the Champions League group until we capitulated to Roma, drew 3-0, and then obviously got battered by them out there. And some of the recent performances where a lot of kind of this squad depth has sort of come to the fore. Norwich being kind of the prime example of 9 international footballers barely looking like they could sustain a performance for 90 minutes. And there's been a few things which have kind of led to frustrations. And yeah, it was just really kind of a piece that looked at how other clubs do it. Ajax, Barcelona, Borussia Dortmund again being a huge influence. The fact that they're still so competitive with Bayern when they pretty much sell their best players to them every single season is quite a testament to their model. And just thinking, how could that apply to Chelsea? We've got a better academy than pretty much everyone in Europe. Plus, we've still got some pretty impressive resources. We still spent £200 million in the summer. It's not like we've become, as Conte puts it, completely in an austerity program.
Yeah,
we're still spending a considerable amount of money. It's just really the allocation of that money. How could we spend it better? Should we spend it on 2-3 really top class players, and then maybe use the academy for or a lot of the younger players that we bought for depth, versus going out and buying players of sort of kind of Drinkwater's level, who as I said, he's a good squad player, but that's kind of the benchmark of what he is. He's just going to be a good squad player. He's not really going to go and start for Chelsea against Bayern Munich and dominate Thiago Alcantara and Vidal and Tolisso and all the other players. It's just I don't want to call him a stopgap player, but I mean he is kind of what he is. So yeah, it was just looking at that and thinking potentially what we could do better there.
Exactly. And I wanted to ask you, why do you think Chelsea have come to this point? Where do you think things went wrong originally for why we've become the club we are at this moment in time?
I mean, really, there's probably 2 points in that we hugely lucked out with this incredible core of players that we had from kind of maybe 2004 to 12. The sort of Cech, Terry, Lampard, Balak, Essien, etc., Drogba, Spine, and the fact that these players were both from a character standpoint and also an ability standpoint just absolutely incredible. And the fact that pretty much 2008 that a lot of the kind of anecdotal stories around them pretty much managing themselves to a Champions League final and almost winning the European Cup, kind of ignoring Avram Grant, I think it kind of shows you the level of of character and ability that the squad has, and so many things, so many mistakes that we made managerially and with money. I mean, the amount of money that we spend on players didn't really matter because this core of players just kept pushing on and pushing us through. And I think equally, you know, if you look at City is a very good example. You know, they also came into obviously a significant amount of investment from the City Football Group, but they seem to have a slightly more longer term plan than us, whereas we're very much short term, almost season to season, looking at success that way. You know, it's produced on average a trophy a season, which is fantastic, but there comes a point where you both lose that kind of incredible spine of players, and then, you know, your kind of dominance in the transfer market also goes away. So you kind of then hit a brick wall. And I think that's kind of the point we're sort of coming to, maybe not this season, but maybe definitely in sort of 1 to 2 years. And I kind of made the point in the article saying that really beyond Hazard and Courtois, you know, there's not a lot left really in the squad for us to sell. You know, so we're obviously looking at selling Diego Costa, and he brings in a lot of money, and we turn that into our Morata. But beyond Hazard and Courtois, and maybe Christensen, although hopefully the club, given that he's just signed a contract and not going to sell him, you know, there's not a huge amount of money to bring in to then sort of obviously go and sell, buy further players. So yeah, I'd say really, yeah, just that kind of disappearance of that core of players. I don't necessarily think that we have. I know this kind of thing of being this club who kind of succeeds in the face of chaos, but I think there comes a point where this kind of chaotic approach of changing managers and philosophies and directions, at some point it was going to come unstuck. There's no company or football club in the world who can continually move along in different directions almost every 6 months and continue to be successful. So I just think we're coming towards the natural end of a conclusion of a cycle that started when Abramovich came here, and it's really about now trying to position ourselves again to sort of kick on and claw ourselves back up to that kind of top European table, and it's just figuring out the best way of doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's always been the most frustrating thing with Chelsea, is how quickly people on the board level, higher officials at the club, are so quick to press the panic button. You know, they're so quick to never, you know, keep that sustainability and follow through with the plan. And it is kind of baffling, because a lot of them are, you know, very, you know, made very impressive careers in their business lives and things of that matter. And I mean, in business, you wouldn't just really panic that much if, you know, I mean, surely if you have a long-term plan, know that you're not going to get, let's say, for example, your profits immediately. You know, if your plan is to get to that level over the next 4 years, for example, then, you know, you stick with that plan until you reach it. And it just seems,
absolutely, yeah,
when it comes to, you know, Chelsea and sporting matters, everything's so reactionary, and it is baffling in terms of, you know, the amount of money involved in football these days, the amount of time it takes to bring in transfers, how much it costs, of agent fees, all this types of stuff. And I know that's been the most disappointing thing. I keep making this point a lot of times too, that in a way I kind of feel that some of the issues we're having in the transfer market, the club didn't necessarily plan for it. I think, you know, of course, giving Mourinho a bit too much power at the beginning, letting a lot of players that were signed from very young, your De Bruyne, Salahs, they were supposed to be players for the future. The club had hopes of them by the time they're 24, 25 to be top players, as we're seeing now, you know, this season and previous seasons. And, you know, in a way, I think this is where things start to become a bit more disjointed in terms of, you know, what type of players we need, what type of approach you want to have at the club, etc., etc. And maybe I'm being cynical. Maybe certain people within the club maybe took the opportunity to try and you know, during all of that, you know, unevenness and disjointedness, try to find some situations that are positive for themselves and try and obviously, you know,
further their careers.
Further their careers.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, from kind of a club direction standpoint, I mean, again, sort of going back to the article, I think that the most confusing thing for me, and this isn't necessarily a reflection of Andre Villas-Boas, his ability as a manager and whatever, but if you pay nearly £14 million to actually bring a manager in, which at the time was a very unprecedented move, you know, it's not something that you typically don't go and buy a manager. You think that there would have been a commitment to him for 2, 3, 4, you know, I mean, a very, very long-term project. And for me, it seemed that there was a definitive point where the club was saying, okay, we want to depart from what we're doing. We want to look at a new style. We want to try and do new things. And I mean, the first signs of it not working. And okay, you know, I'm certainly not going to turn down winning the European Cup in Germany and how that all transpired. But as soon as it started looking slightly wrong, I mean, you go from a person who is from this kind of Barcelona, Ajax school of thought around football to then 15 months later, your next kind of proper permanent appointment is Jose Mourinho, which is almost the complete opposite end of the football spectrum. So you've kind of geared yourself up to go down this path, which is very, very clear, very Barcelona-like, very Ajax-like, completely changed the style of football at the club, and decided, actually, you know what, not even 18 months, 15 months later, let's go back to Jose Mourinho, let's go back to the original approach that we had. And I mean, that in itself is for me was one of the strangest things, is that they don't really, and I don't think we've really in the time, particularly that Roman's been here, have kind of established an identity that we have as a team. Maybe during the early parts of 2000s, we used to play this kind of powerful attacking football, but when the players left, you know, when your Balak's left, your Essien's left, your Drogba's left, that kind of went, and probably from 2010, 11, maybe the past 6, 7 years, we've been a team really that's just kind of won league titles, you know, probably by grinding through in 14, 15 with Mourinho, and with Conte, obviously his ability to just kind of switch things up last season. But you know, again, I think you're right. We've just kind of come to a point now where maybe there are certain people at the club who value their position, maybe slightly more than the direction of the club. Maybe they're afraid to voice their opinion. Again, I'm kind of led to believe by people that I speak to around the club and agents and other people that, you know, that they are very, very capable people to deal with. But the problem being is I think sometimes there is like a reticence to voice their opinion or to commit to something, because if it goes wrong, then actually for the first time, it does definitely come back to them on the hand. So, yeah, I mean, I think potentially this summer, I can't see a way that Antonio Conte stays at the club unless he drastically changes, you know, his personality, the way that he wants to conduct business, the kind of players that he wants to work with. I've said this a few times before. I think that he's actually an excellent coach. It's just the fact that he wants to coach experienced players. You know, it's the fact that he's made Azpilicueta into a really top-class centre-back. Moses he's made into a very competent wing-back. You know, he's improved Kante. If you took that approach and actually applied it to a Dujon Sterling or someone who is an actual player in that position, I think, you know, you'd actually get some really good results. But it's just not how he wants to operate. He wants to, you know, maybe that's him. He wants to win immediately. He doesn't want to build things. He wants players that come in, he'll improve them 5-10%, and hopefully that's enough to go on and push things. But yeah, I think this summer is going to be a real point in time where the club, they actually have an opportunity to implement some kind of philosophy, some kind of direction. You know, it's not going to be something that happens overnight, but I do believe that they actually have the chance now. It's just whether they've got the, you know, the kind of, I don't want to say the minerals to do it, but you know, I mean, if we keep going down the same path we're going down, considering that the kind of players we're attracting, the sort of money we're spending on just kind of stocking up the squad, you know, for me, that isn't leading us back to kind of the direction we want to head in. And I can only see that just being the case for the next 2-3 seasons, if that's kind of, you know, just keeping things as they are, just keeping the status quo. So I would hope this summer, at least now, there's some thought into what the direction wants to be. But I think you and I both know with Chelsea that things change very quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but you know, for me, it's a perfect opportunity, and I do hope that the club are thinking about approaching things slightly differently going forward, because I think, as I said, you know, they're very intelligent people, and they've run successful businesses, and they know when something is trending downwards rather than upwards. And I think we're kind of at that point now.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And again, your point about Conte too was spot on as well. Yeah, he made that point earlier about having you know, the club played at like 120%, and
yeah.
With that earlier point you said, I mean, you know, sorry, they played at 120% when they won the league last season. And that point you made about, you know, Conte and his managerial style, getting that extra 10 to 12% out of each player, you know, when you combine all of that, that creates another 120% that, you know, in the short term, you know, a club can overachieve, especially when you have the right formula. You know, when you're only playing one game a week, you're not traveling as much. It makes a big difference in, you know, a fit player is going to be a much better player compared to that same player when he's tired. And yeah, you're right. And again, you know, with Conte, again, I respect the manager. He is a very good manager. When I have criticisms, even saying criticism feels kind of harsh. I just feel that maybe the philosophy of his coaching style, even though I'm not saying it's bad, and this is the reason why it's bad, it just doesn't suit what the ingredients that Chelsea have, it's like
The difference between, yeah.
exactly. It's like, you've got like a pizza restaurant and you're bringing a guy in that knows how to make burgers. What are you going to expect him to do with that squad? Yeah, terrible analogy. I'm
Burger
so
pizza
bad when it comes to that. Exactly. And in a way, we've kind of enforced Conte to have ingredients that he's not necessarily too happy with. Yeah, he's tried to change some of them to fit his style. Your Moses, for example, but even in regards to Moses, he did the same thing with Asma. Wing backs aren't really, everyone knows wing backs are just more defensive wingers. It's not that hard to get them to play. So I can't use that as a massive credit. I'm sorry, but yeah. Again, as we always go on quite a lot of times, just that whole inefficiency with the club. Like we're saying, youth team is their own separate thing. People on the board want their own thing. The manager wants his own thing. There's no unity, and this is the issue we've been having, where too often there's no coherent, consistent push for titles, Champions Leagues, etc. And you're right. And I liked how you did title things Chelsea 2.0, because it is like we have reached a tipping point in terms of, after this season, I can't see the club making these same mistakes ever in the future from now on. Of course, that's me saying it logically. Chelsea are a very illogical club. It's going to really depend on who the new manager is going to be, because most likely Conte will decide he wants to leave. He won't get sacked. He'll probably decide he wants to leave end of the season. But I'm just out of curiosity. I'm just curious as to know, what type of direction would you like to see at Chelsea for the future? And what's the small stepping stones we can make to actually get there?
I think, personally, the main thing for me is to, and I know a lot of people considering kind of some of the, at least the kind of high profile stuff that some of the board has been involved over the past couple of years, is to actually give the kind of the new technical director a bit more power in terms of the club and direction, because they're the only people at the Chelsea who don't get sacked or don't get sold.
Yeah,
they're the only people there to safeguard the philosophy of the club. And you see teams like Bayern, for example, they don't chop and change their board. They've got football people on the board. They've got the right level of knowledge on there. And maybe it would take someone that even Roman is friendly with. Maybe someone it's quite left field, but like Andrei Shevchenko, just to be like a figurehead person who then has a load of really smart people working for him and going, okay, how can we build the club going forward? And it's not going to be one of these things where it's a massive revolution in the summer. First of all, my first point that you would bring back the likes of Zuma, Van Hinkel, Baker, Loftus-Cheek, all these sorts of players who are in their kind of early 20s, and they would be kind of the first crop of your kind of squad players, not as in kind of like demeaning them in terms of standard, but real rotational players. Then all of a sudden that summer, you don't have to focus about buying another squad player in midfield, a defender, a forward, whatever. You bring back these maybe 8 or so academy players who are more than capable of playing for Chelsea. You might look at their loans and think, okay, some of them haven't been as successful as you might have wanted to, but I'm more than happy to say, in a system at Chelsea with players that are familiar with better players, they're likely to do fairly well. At least, when you compare to some of the players we've brought in this summer, and this isn't digging Bakayoko out. I think he's had some fairly good games, but his general level of performance hasn't been fantastic. If that's the benchmark for 10, 15, 20 games, then I'm quite happy to say, there's at least probably 10 people out on loan who can come in and do that sort of thing. So immediately you're adding a kind of volume of players back into the squad. So this question about are people are tired, etc. You've got a load of really young players who are now really kind of keen to play for the club. They're really fit. They're not going to be sort of complaining about being tired, etc. And that's when you start sort of creating this pipeline from the academy. And whether the club think, okay, we get players to 18, we send them out on a 2 or 3 year loan till they're 21, or however they want to do it. But then once they come back in the club, they get 3 years here, because you never know if a player is going to come in and set the world alight like Andreas Christensen, or they might develop into like a Jesse Lingard type talent who, he's going to save United 30, 40, 50 million pounds in the next few seasons, because they don't have to go out and buy someone who can be trusted to play at the level that United are trying to play at. And Lingard was never really that kind of player. He's just sort of developed into it because he's been given chances, he's been given time, he's been given.
It's almost as if playing with top class, world class players around you, improves you. Yeah.
Such a culture, and particularly among Chelsea fans, to judge young players after 10 minutes. oh, he's not running around enough, or he's not doing enough, etc. But if you apply the same to some of the, £70 million signings, I mean, you can't criticise Morata on social media because you get hounded by hundreds of thousands of people telling you that you've got to give him a chance. But yet, if I don't know, if Charlie Musonda has a bad half an hour cameo, he's obviously not good enough. Let's send him on loan. So it's kind of this shifting this culture really in terms of both the clubs and the fans, and making it slightly more of a meritocracy. Because at the moment, I don't think it really is. You can afford as a senior player, or even a player who's been bought, to actually drop quite regularly fairly average to poor performances, and yet as an academy player, that's not the case. So, I mean, my first step would really be the summer is to bring all these guys back. Start evaluating them, start figuring out where they can actually kind of figure into the team, and start playing some of them.
Exactly. I think exactly. Sorry, and I think that was one of the issues in terms of when Conte first came, because really Conte's been here for 2 years. I mean, basically 2 seasons. The only time where he's managed to really assess, players in the loan army and who's really out there and available to him was this season. Last year he was with the Italian national squad. He came to Chelsea. Most of those players already left on loan. He never saw any of them, didn't really know anything about most of them. Maybe, just maybe, if he had another, let's say he had 2 pre-seasons where, let's say he'd seen a Baker or Boga or Bertrand Joy for the past 2 seasons. A pre-season's like nearly a month. 2 months with these players to really see them day in, day out. Maybe it could have affected things. Maybe he could have seen a bit more. But then, really, I think with Chelsea as well, in terms of how they use the loan army, I don't think the managers don't really have a say in terms of what happens. I think there's already people within the club that really sort out, when a player's going on loan. So, for example, let's say, I think Baker last season, he was already on loan with Vitesse. I don't think he had the pre-season at Chelsea. So the manager had no time really to assess or see anything about him. And I think sometimes too, maybe the club in a way are kind of creating that vibe where it's like, well, it's really not your business to worry about the youth. So, if the manager's not really seeing most of these guys, maybe, I mean, do you think there's an argument that it's not necessarily his fault all the time, that he doesn't have so much involvement with youth or care so much about them?
Yeah, I mean, I think partly there's such a huge pressure on him to deliver virtually every single trophy that we're in, and I think again I think probably you go back to the root of it, and I think as a club we at least probably from maybe 2012 onwards, I looked at all the signings that we've made, and 70% of them are under 25, so they're young players.
Yeah.
So it's finding a manager that's the kind of profile of player that he wants to work with. He can develop talent. They can actually look at a player who's 21, 22 and think, actually, do you know what? I think you could be X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And I think it starts from there. You can't bring a manager in who has never really shown any kind of tendency to play young players. Even with Italy, you're looking at Pella and other players that he brought in, and it was very much a reliance on experienced pros. The same with Juventus. It's he lucked out with Paul Pogba over there, but I mean, in general, most of his team was kind of late 20s, early 30s. And you're expecting a guy to then come in and all of a sudden start evaluating, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, when maybe that's not something he can do. It's not suggesting that it's something he would never be able to do. But again, I think your burger pizza analogy, you don't bring a guy in who is a specialist in one thing, which is obviously building a very experienced team and then asking him to develop young talent. I don't think that necessarily works. But
exactly, and that's why I can't. Some people might think I'm extremely too critical with Conte. I always think I'm very objective. I can't ever be too harsh on Conte because really, we can all agree he doesn't have the tailor-made ingredients really to do what he preferably prefer to do. That's the club's fault. Keep signing these CV managers where we just space everything they do off the experiences, the past trophies and titles they've won instead of actually how they've won it and if it actually suits Chelsea. And I don't know. I mean, sometimes with these big clubs, I really do find it quite baffling at times. So, for example, I look at Barcelona. I think they're really the model club for every club to strive to achieve. I think Man City are doing an excellent job at trying to reach those levels. And I mean, the pressure at Barcelona is much higher compared to anything at Chelsea. For example, I think if Conte was a Barca manager, the expectations would be ridiculous. I mean, he'd at least 2 trophies minimum You know, the 2 finals minimum per season they'd have to get in. At Chelsea, that's definitely not the case. So when people keep saying Conte's under, or Chelsea managers are under so much pressure, that's not the case at all. And I think that when you look at Barcelona over the past few years, they've never signed any CV manager. I mean, look at Valverde, for example. The only titles he won was at the Olympiacos in Greece, and they're unbeaten in the league. He's stopped using 3 in midfield, using a 4-4-2. Can you believe that? And I mean, and they're clear favourites for the league title now. Barca, if you were to just judge him on his CV and his history, he's not going to look as exciting. He's not going to look so tantalising in terms of, oh, this guy's going to be good for the club, or all those ridiculous old-fashioned statements like, oh, can he manage big players, blah blah blah, whatever. It's easy to manage big players, just win games with them. That's really it. That's the start. Winner, exactly, that's the start. And I think that's the type of approach that Chelsea really need to start looking into for the seasons to come, because again, this talk of inefficiency, we talk about how the loan army really is makes a lot of money for the club. It's a money generator, but there's no way they can be happy in terms of some of the profits they've been making off certain players. So let's say, for example, the club were to sell Baker next season. Now, the type of money Baker could have gone for, where if let's say he was involved with the squad this season, or was in the Premier League instead of being forced to go to the to Middlesbrough. Let's say he leaves next year, he's going for way more money than he would leave now if Chelsea made him available in the market. And if you've got about 30 players on loan, and you're mismanaging 90% of them, then how's that really going to help you in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the question I'd ask now is, given Lingard's form, I mean, how much would he be worth in the current market? He's got to be a
at least
£1 million player. It's I know it's insane to think that, but I mean, he's only worth that because he's playing at Manchester United and he's actually getting minutes. If you had Baker or any of these young players who've gone out and even like a Van Hinkel, I mean, I think Van Hinkel really, if he was replicating similar kind of form for Chelsea, you're talking about, again, another 30-40 million pound player. And this is kind of part of the sort of the model stuff that I've been looking at, is even if you have players who maybe want to go and play first team football, so say someone like a Nathan Ake really wanted to go and play first team football, 2-3 seasons playing at Chelsea, I mean, we've got what, 25 million pounds of him. I mean, I'm looking at Van Dijk at 75 million pounds. I'm thinking if Ake had 2-3 seasons of 20-30 games at Chelsea, he's easily like another 40 million pound player. We're almost kind of doing ourselves out of money by kind of underplaying these players, particularly when they come back to the club. Christensen obviously is very much an anomaly, but I mean, Chalobah going for £5 million. I mean, that's, for me, it's just, in the current context of the market, is insane. And
ridiculous, yeah.
I mean, if we were to sell, Loftus-Cheek or whoever else potentially might be someone that gets sold. We bought Drinkwater and Bakayoko, well, they're like 30-40 million pound players, and Loftus-Cheek might go for like 10 million quid. And you're just thinking, what's the point? But maybe that's the thing that gets the club's attention. They're very much focused on the economic side of things. If they can actually realise that, by bringing in this kind of stream of players, hopefully, maybe every 2 seasons you get a Christensen who comes in, some of that standard, who can really, really stake a first team claim. But as I said, you may have someone who comes in, someone like an Ake, plays 3 seasons, gets sold for £40 million. That £40 million goes towards a Dybala or someone that you really think is a sensational top tier talent. That's how the club should operate, considering the financial restrictions they have.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of just getting these £4, £5, £6 million, for some of these random players like Nathan and Wallace and all the kind of random guys that we bought 4 or 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Lucas Piazon, these kind of random guys, we're going to get a little bit of profit on them. But instead of taking the time to properly develop them, properly put them into the squad, some minutes, give them time to develop, even then you might even be surprised. I think, again, you look at Harry Kane is always going to be the classic example of someone who was absolutely dreadful on loan, couldn't even get in the Leyton Orient team at one point.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
And yet, give him time in the team, give him time to find his feet. He's what, £100 million player now. I mean, it's you never know. I mean, the thing is, you never know. Someone could be absolutely dreadful on loan, come back to Chelsea and be an absolute superstar. But we'll never know unless we give them the time in the team.
Yeah, of course. And you touched on some really good points in the article as well. I think the first one, I think we even spoke about that briefly in previous streams, but which was an excellent point you made in your article, was the fact that the problem with some Chelsea youth, or maybe in terms of how they were trained to begin with was that they're too multifaceted. You touched on Nathan Aki. You know, Nathan Aki, really, I remember him. He was a midfield player, you know, a guy.
100%.
You could say that he maybe like a young Matic in terms of, you know, deep lying defensive plus a ball winner where you can, you know, they can set attacks, you know, spray long balls, etc., etc. And you know, he goes on loan to Watford, plays left wing back the whole season. We sent him to Bournemouth. He was supposed to play in midfield, can only get a game in defense. And really, let's say, for example, if Aki was always going to be a defender, he'd be probably a better player now because clubs would have signed him knowing that, you know what, I'm signing him to be my defense. Imagine, for example, you know, last season, that form he was showing on loan at Bournemouth, he missed nearly the first half of the season. He only started playing nearly those final 6 weeks before the January transfer window. And imagine his value. Imagine maybe he could have really proven Conte. Maybe if he played 3 more months where he was playing in central defense, maybe Conte would have been like, you know what, maybe we don't need to go for a Rudiger, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue of the kind of the multifaceted training stuff, I think personally it's quite interesting, quite useful. But I've actually been looking at Ajax quite a lot recently, and they went through this phase of really departing away from their traditional course. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Ajax's sort of training methods, they pretty much, they see a guy at 12 in the academy, and Ajax have this fantastic thing where they play exactly the same way from the academy to the first team.
Yeah.
And because the philosophy is set by Ajax and not by a manager, it's 4-3-3 regardless of who comes in. We play 4-3-3. That's how they work. Doesn't matter if they sign Conte and he likes 3 defenders. Conte's playing 4-3-3. Doesn't matter if it's Mourinho and he wants to play 4-2-3-1. Mourinho is playing 4-3-3. So from the age of like 12 to 18, 19, 20, when they start breaking into the first team, that 8 to 10 year period, all they are doing is learning how to play one specific role in that team. So they're learning how to play left centre back. They're learning how to play the number 6 of the holding midfielder. They're learning how to play left wing.
Yeah.
Now, I think with Chelsea, there is a benefit to some of this multi-training because particularly for centre backs, Christensen did play in midfield quite a bit as a youngster, and you can see that with his comfort on the ball.
Yes.
So maybe for me personally, I'd look at, say, you know, you get them to a position, say 15, 16. So when they start maybe playing in the FA Youth Cup, saying, okay, you know, you've done all your kind of from 12 to 14, 15. We've played you in 7 different positions. You are going to be a centre back. You are going to be a holding midfielder. You're going to be an attacking midfielder. You're going to be a winger. And then for that period from 16 to say 18 or 19, before maybe they get on loan, or if they're good enough, they go straight into that first team pipeline.
Yeah.
All they are doing is playing that position. They're learning the tactics. They're learning the kind of runs they need to make. They're learning every single thing about that position, and that's where they play.
Exactly.
You know, I think that you have all of that skill set that they've learned from 10 to 16. You know, the ability to play on the left, on the right, so you're not just sort of, you know, limiting someone to one side. In midfield, they play the 6, they play the Lampard role, they play the Ballack role, they play the Essien role.
Yeah.
And by the time they come into the first team, they know exactly how they have to play. You know, and I think that the thing that I you know, the thing that I would love to see at the club is them to pick a way of playing, because, you know, we've gone from a 4-3-3 to a 4-2-3-1 to a 3-4-3 to a 3-5-2, and I find it very difficult, in particularly in terms of the academy. I think Mason Mount is a fantastic example. This guy is, you know, in his age group.
Yeah, I mean, he's
one of the best number 10s. Yeah,
you're right. To me, he's literally the exact equivalent of Asensio. I mean, stylistically,
100%.
long shots, power, even the same hair. They're literally the same.
And yet you look at him now and you think, you know what, this is one of the most talented English players that we've had come through the academy in ages. Where does he play? Does he?
Exactly.
Because let's be honest, he's not going to play instead of Eden Hazard. You know, he's not going to play instead of Morata. So what? Did you drop him into midfield where he hasn't played? He's been playing as a number 10.
Yeah.
Do you try and now convert him into winger when he's in his 20s? You know, it doesn't make sense to continue to develop all these players, and it almost be completely down to luck depending on the manager.
Exactly.
We'll make it a manager who wants to play 4-2-3-1 next season. You know, all of a sudden he comes back and he's like, fantastic, I can play the number 10 role. But you know, it's far too much down to circumstance rather than having this kind of planned production line, which is, I think, the Ajax and traditionally the Barcelona method.
Exactly. And he made a point as well, saying that Ajax have been getting greater success in terms of the young players coming through. Obviously, your De Ligt is at the back. You know, Justin Kluivert.
Frankie
a
de
lot of
Jong, Justin Kluivert, you've got
Frankie playing false centre back. I mean, he's looking very impressive, and I've always been an advocate that that innovation is what you need to get the best out of the team. Because really, sometimes I feel that set positions is a really outdated type of thing, and it is a shame at Chelsea because there is a beauty in terms of how multifaceted these young players are, that they're able to play in so many different positions to a very high level. I mean, for example, you guys might not know, Jay Da Silva was another guy too. I mean, not only was he playing left wing back, but he'd be playing as a number 10 and in midfield. And it's just like, if what we're doing is very advanced in terms of player development. If the club at the in terms of the first team, if they share that same ambition of, go on to something, and why are we onto something? Because the youth team are winning nearly every trophy every season. Plus, they're not just winning by lucky decisions or penalties, absolutely dominating teams that have had the likes of your Rashfords, your Sanes, your Fosu Mensahs, you can go on. And plus beating European opposition as well. Really, if Chelsea wanted any test that what they're doing is the right thing, we've had how many years of experience really to see what's happening. If only there was that bravery at the top where, we're onto something. We can, what we're doing with the youth team, we can translate this to the first team. And I mean, for example, really, I knew that really we had to bring in Guardiola. I know that I heard that Roman was a massive fan. They tried to do a lot of things to bring him to the club. By then, he already signed for City. Sometimes I wonder in my head, what would Guardiola have done with the youth? Seeing the whole setup at Chelsea, just how technically advanced these players are, what would he have done? I mean, it really could have been something exciting. But before we continue, we've actually got a super chat. And you guys, as I've stated, if you want any of us to answer your questions, send a super chat, obviously, to keep the focus of the stream going. But this one sent by Capo, and he wants to know, okay, Tuchel and Summer, Sterling, Masunda, Maddox, Baker, Loftus, Hudson-Odoi are ready for his style. Plus, Chelsea to sign Lamar due to Emanalo links. Now, Joe, what's your thoughts on Tuchel? Because I kind of feel that his name gets thrown out a bit too easily, purely because he used Dembele and Perisic. I can't remember. What's the American kid's name? Pulisic. Yeah, that's it. That's it. What's your thoughts on Tuchel?
I like him as a coach, but I think he's got a lot of the or qualities, the same kind of issues with the board that Conte had. At Chelsea. There was a lot of rumours that he left Dortmund because he wanted to go in a slightly different direction from the club. Again, if you're bringing someone in here who's kind of got that very sort of steadfast mentality of, this is the way that I want to go, this is kind of the sort of way forward. And I think we know that Chelsea managers don't particularly last. I think it's another step in the direction of investing so much into a manager and expecting them to kind of overhaul everything. Again, I think that the style of football they play, everything that I would like to see is pretty much, kind of embedded in his style. It's just one of those things where I think from a personality standpoint, you also need someone who can come in and actually say, okay, the club, we want to go younger. We want to start doing this. We want to start playing younger players. We want to start using some of the younger players, and they have to be on board with that. I think that has to be the case going forward, because we can't be in a position again where we just go and get another flavour of the month manager like Conte, who, fantastic with Italy, Juventus, etc. But when they really kind of do sort of the deeper analysis on it, he's not a guy who probably really aligned well with the club's direction.
Exactly.
Pretty much won a league title in spite of the alignment with the club. Tuchel, I think you do think he's a fantastic coach, but I think if the club were to do their proper due diligence on him, particularly around the reasons he left Dortmund, a lot of it seemed to be very similar to what's going on with Conte at the moment. So they would probably have to factor that in.
Exactly. I completely 100% agree with everything you said. I don't necessarily think Tuchel really is the right way to go, but also he wanted to know in regards to Thomas Lemar. Now, he was saying that, of course, Emanalo signed for Monaco. I think we all knew that was going to be happening. Maybe with his previous ties with Chelsea. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to answer that. What's your thoughts on Thomas Lemar as a player, actually?
Tough one. I think he is a very, very good footballer in the way that he can, his sort of combination play with sort of in general. But my one concern with him is that you are probably going to invest a lot of money into a player who, again,
Yes.
isn't a 15 goal a season, isn't a 15 assist a season man. It's just a very good footballer. I mean, like a very approaching kind of top tier in terms of his ability. But then so someone like David Alaba, and he's a left back. You know, he's that kind of player who's a really fantastic footballer.
Of course.
Balance, but for the sort of money I imagine he's going to go for, you know, I think Chelsea need to add goals to this team. You know, I think that for me is, if you're going to buy I think again it's one of the points you make with Willian quite regularly, is that, you know, this is another person who has success playing on the left, and that, you know, as long as Eden Hazard is a Chelsea player, he's not going to play on the left hand side, and you know, you lose some of that effectiveness of cutting in, shooting, cutting in, passing. Same as Willian, you know, when you play them from the right hand side. So, you know, again, that would be another thing that I'd look at, is that this is a guy who primarily plays from the left. Probably won't play there that much for Chelsea. Will primarily play from the right hand side, and maybe he's a less effective player because of it.
Of course, and there was one thing he said about combination, and Lamar is a combination player. You know, sometimes it's like Frank Ribery, for example. They're very similar in terms of, you know, Lamar out wide on the left. Lamar, especially last year, that's where people don't even remember him from, was last season, not this season. He had Mendy swarming out wide, and plus you've got two strikers that aren't dropping deep, but they're making runs in behind. So you've got to realize, when you're on the ball, you've got an option on your left, plus you've got two guys in front of you. You know, it does make it easier to play. Now, at Chelsea, with how Conte likes those front guys to play, we know how central they are. Do you necessarily see that link up on the left-hand side? That normally happens when Hazard, you know, moves to the left, which he isn't doing every single game, because Hazard's dropping deep, swinging to the right, he's moving around. So I really don't think Lamar, first for the money, not worth it. Would he improve the team? No. I think Lamar, one of those guys where, one, if he's playing for a team that suits him better, he'd be much better. But again, he's another guy that needs at least 2 more years before we start looking at a big club, in my opinion. If he goes to an Arsenal, who, you know, not the same team anymore, that would make more sense for him. He has the time to develop. But coming to Chelsea now, where I think, you know, if he did go for 80, 90 million, I don't think he would ever justify that transfer fee, probably ever. So I definitely don't think that's the right direction to go to. And, you know, there's a point I keep stressing a lot, you guys, when it comes to looking at players and player recruitment. Think of players that suit the system and complement what we're trying to do. I don't think Lamar necessarily is going to suit that, because I think he is better on the left-hand side, and he's not a goal threat. You know, he's more of a playmaker. I think at Liverpool, kind of like a Coutinho, maybe not as good as him, but similar in terms of, you know, playing people in, link-up play. That's his best traits, and I don't think we need that really for the system. But yeah, well, of course, before we had to answer that super chat, we were talking about obviously how multifaceted the Chelsea youth are, and there was another guy that's really paid the price over these past couple of years, and that's Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Now, of course, throughout the youth team, people think that he can't play in midfield, but, you know, you've got to realize, you know, what a Conte and Mourinho expects from midfielders is completely different. So what 99% of managers would expect from them, actually not 99%, but from what most managers would expect from their midfield players. And I really think that Ruben's, you know, obviously paid the price, because, you know, this guy has been able to play, you know, as box to box, as a defensive mid as well, further up as well. And I think this is why so many Chelsea managers haven't really been able to assess where he plays best and what his best qualities are.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, again, this is a guy who completely dominated in a kind of a very casual way, you know, sort of youth team football. And, you know, he played as a holding midfielder. He played kind of more in that Michael Ballack role. He played in the Lampard role. He's played as a number 10. He's played on a winger. He's probably played up front for the youth team. And again, I think he's another one who maybe would have benefited at maybe 16. Someone going, okay, you know, we see you as a holding player, or we see you as a number 8. We see you as a number 10, because I think it's just one of those things where he can play wide. Saying he's the world's greatest winger, but I mean, he can play wide effectively. He can play as a number 10. He can probably play up front. You know, it's kind of one of these things where his kind of ability to do lots of different things counts against him. Now, you know, in general, the way that the club handled him over the past 3 seasons has been pretty diabolical. You know, when you've got Neil Bath at the club saying that, you know, someone needs at least 150 senior appearances or 200 senior appearances to come through the club, and in 3 seasons, I think Ruben was playing on average 4. You know, if you look at his minutes, it worked out to 4 games a season. You know, so 12 games in 3 years.
Yeah,
and the club are saying that he needs 150 games. So why, after the first season, when it was quite obvious that he wasn't going to be, figuring into the plans, why didn't they send him out on loan? I mean, he's if you look at some of the comments that about him this season, so he's head of the kind of the loan technical department or whatever it has to say. He said that everyone's got to be patient with Ruben. He said, I've got no doubt that he'll get there because he's super talented. In some of the performances this season, we've seen glimpses of his power, his technique under pressure, and you just think, wow, I'm excited by for his future. But he said the big thing for Ruben is consistency of performance and to stay fit. And he finished it by saying, and I think this is really important and very balanced, he said, you've got to remember he hasn't played regularly for 3 seasons. That's a big hit on a player.
Of course.
So, I think the club are aware, at least, from within, in terms of Eddie Newton's kind of area, that this season for Palace, he's had glimpses of that kind of ability that they want to see. But it's his first time playing as a pro. He's already played in half a season more minutes for Crystal Palace than he has done for Chelsea in 3 years. Exactly. Zappacosta's already played more football for Chelsea than Loftus-Cheek. Bakayoko has. Yeah. They haven't necessarily shown me more than he has in his sort of cameos and stuff like that. And this is a guy who's played 10 minutes here and there. He's had a half here and there. And I think he's a real kind of, I would probably say the academy want to look at him and think, okay, this is not how we want to approach things going forward. But I still have got a lot of hope from him. I think, again, if you give him 3 years of football, if it's hopefully a kind of a level above Palace, maybe again on loan next season.
Yeah, of course.
In him, you've got a really fantastic player, because you don't get people that big with his kind of technique.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think for him, if he starts adding goals to his game as well, then I think it's game over for a lot of people.
Of course. And I mean, here's, when I look at a youth player, I see them as youth in terms of how effective are they when it comes to, not even in the final third, but when it comes to taking chances. Because really, with football today and, the pressure that managers put themselves under and what clubs put on them as well, this is why they really appreciate goals being scored. For example, I think with Rashford, he announced himself with those 2 goals. Let's say he put in the same type of performance, but he didn't score any goals. Would he have got the same type of opportunities throughout the season? Maybe not necessarily. Goals really help, because obviously you're basically telling the manager, you know what, I can rely on you. I think when it comes to that important moment, you're going to do it for me. I think that does frustrate me, because I think with young players, I mean, the quicker you use some of these talented guys, the quicker they're going to adjust to, being decisive in moments like that. And I think this is the frustrating thing with Ruben, because really, and it shows you how short-sighted the club are. We're starting to see the rise again of box-to-box midfield players. Your Milinkovic-Savic from Lazio, Goretzka. Yes. When you're looking at Goretzka, this guy was in the Schalke first team since, I think 16. So literally identical to Ruben Loftus-Cheek in terms of how, nearly identical in terms of how quickly they were in the first team setup and stuff like that. Slowly, and literally in Germany, they know how to use youth players. This is why so many of them become young internationals before they're 20 years old for them, because it's not about, okay, you're young, you have to play here, and if you don't perform now, that's it. It's about management of game time. Now, for the exceptional talented players, that's what they do. Okay, you're 16, you're 17 years old. Okay, here's 10 minutes this game, 10 minutes that game. That slowly develops next season, where you're earning maybe an extra, 300, 400 minutes. Next year, those minutes are doubling. And then, manager starts using you. And then, look at Goretzka now, adding goals to his game. He's 22. Now,
going to Bayern.
Exactly. Literally the same age as Ruben, but that's the reason why he's so decisive now in games is because he's been within the first team setup. He's got the confidence because there's trust within the club that they have faith in him, and he's been, obviously, since he was young, he's acclimatized to what's expected from you playing at the top level of football.
Yeah,
and this is why he's probably going to be going to Bayern in the summer, and he's looking like a completely fantastic player. And when I watch him play, I mean, he looks really just like Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
Yeah, 100%. Very, very similar.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I love about both of the players is it's the first touch. Like the ball comes to them at any speed, no matter where the body is. One touch and they're facing the goal, and it just saves so much time, and they already know what they're going to do with the pass. Ruben, you're seeing that in his talent. Sometimes with youth football, you guys don't necessarily look at how many goals or assists they get. Stats shouldn't really matter. Judge him when he's 24, 25, then he can do that. But it's just so short-sighted how the club just didn't realize that, this is the number 8 we need in the team, and we can build something around him, because you know, it's no surprise that you know, these type of number eights. I mean, I think Milinkovic-Savic, when he leaves Lazio, he's going to go for a ridiculous amount of money. I think with Goretzka too, I don't know why Schalke couldn't get him on a new contract. They've probably missed out on 50 million just because they didn't do that. You know, there's so many examples. I mean, Rabiot too. He is another example. I remember seeing him all those years back when we were playing Paris Saint-Germain. Wasn't too impressed, but I could see some things he was doing. Now he's a French international and he's a first teamer for Paris Saint-Germain. You know, Chelsea should have been the path for Ruben Loftus.
Yeah. No, I mean, the interesting thing, you bring up Schalke, though, and I think what's really interesting is you look at their culture is obviously to develop young talent. And if you were to say, you know, I mean, they had kind of Chelsea's like stopping power, so we wouldn't have to sell our best prospects. When you look at their team, you're talking about having Neuer in goal, you're talking about Mesut Ozil, you know, Benedict Huides, you're talking about Matip, the Liverpool centre half, Draxler, you're talking about Goretzka, Leroy Sané. I mean, you're talking about a really fantastic group of players. You know, and Chelsea could have something very, very similar. You know, I mean, the thing that stuck out to me, I think I could never remember the guy's name, but you know, they have a guy running their academy. He's one of the most respected guys in German football.
Let me Google it. I forgot what his name is.
Yeah, we absolutely tore them to pieces in a youth team game. I think the first time we won that UEFA Youth League, and Leroy Sané was playing, and I think there was a few others who are actually now playing for their first team, and yet not a single one of my players will get into this team. And Sané is now tearing up for Manchester City because he's had opportunities. So we have the talent, we have the quality of players to go and do something like this Schalke team. I mean, that, you know, I've just ruled off maybe 7 really top class players who, if they didn't, you know, if they were a bigger team, they wouldn't have had to sell them.
Exactly.
And that puts Schalke probably challenging with Bayern every single season.
Of course, and they
would we could have this. You know, this is the thing. Is people tell me, you know, it's unrealistic to promote youth team players, but Ajax I think their aim is to graduate 2 players every 3 seasons into the first team. That to me, that doesn't sound too unreasonable considering how talented, you know, the squad is here. And in terms of that graduation, you put 2 players in. If 2 players want to go and move on, you go and sell them for 30-40 million pounds because they've been at the club for 2-3 seasons. It's just a self-perpetuating circle, and the best ones stay.
Exactly, you're right.
It's all rocket science.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And I think that's one thing Chelsea really need to do now. I really don't think it's too hard to start getting youth into the team. I think, you know, I kept making that point a lot of times in regards to, you know, the club needs to start pushing more, what's the word? How can I forget the bloody words? Feeder clubs. Yes, I mean, looking at Man City, for example, you know, they got the Almeria in Spain. I actually watched a game where they beat Real Madrid. Mafia, the guy that young right back on loan for them, was absolutely fantastic in that game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him being in the City team in a few years. But then, you know, you're realizing there's literally 4 players from Man City's youth team in that squad. Not all of them are in the first team, but they're not going to be there for the season. You know, they're going to have that time and growth to develop in. And I think Chelsea needs to start getting more feeder clubs because this, I mean, I don't know why they've never really learned from this. I don't know how, maybe it sounds really simplistic as just a fan, but I don't understand how hard it is to really get these relationships with clubs where it's like, okay, we can trust you to use our loan player and look after them. Here's our best, you know, our best youngster.
Yeah, give them the best youngsters, yeah.
Exactly. With Christensen, for me, it's no surprise why Courtois and Christensen are in the first team because they went to the 2 best clubs. I think, for example, let's say other players got the same opportunities and they're playing first team for those clubs, they'd probably be in the first team now with Chelsea as well. That's one thing they need to do. The second thing, which I don't understand, was never happened, is start using buyback clauses. I mean, for example, we saw what Real Madrid did with Morata. It was basically like a loan move for Morata at Juventus, because the thing is, when a club owns you, they want to use you more, for example, and they're thinking, well, there's a chance of be going back to Real Madrid anyway. Let's make sure, if he is going to definitely go, let's make sure we can actually get the value for him. Let's make sure Real Madrid are going to come in to sign this player again. And then what did Real Madrid do? After 1 year, sold him for double the money to us. And it's just like we've missed the ball so many times on using that same approach to some of our other young players, because the reason why lots of them don't do well on loan is that if you're a loan player, you don't really have much pedigree in some of these clubs, especially when nearly all these clubs have managers that are sacked. I think Berger's probably the most unluckiest out of all of them because every club he's been to, managers have been sacked. At Rennes, the guy was sacked pretty early on. New manager comes in. That Granada, 3 different managers in 1 year. I mean, really, what's he supposed to do? How can he really show anything? Because you know what happens. Football's so cliched. Oh, you're on loan? I'm not going to really look into you too much. And let me see what I have because, you know, you're not going to be here for next season if I'm going to be here. I don't really care too much about you. It keeps happening. Chelsea, this whole motto of, you know, basically in a way, because I don't know, they are forcing these youngsters to sign these long-term contracts before they can leave on loan. You know what? This is why I respect Solanke. Of course, it's a risky approach because, you know, a lot of players don't want to be, you know, don't want to not play football for a year. Given that, you know, because that's how drastic it had to become for Solanke. He couldn't play first in football for a whole year before he could leave. Morally, do I think that's right? I don't really think it is. You know, usually with clubs in greed, eventually there'll be some measures in place by higher ups that are going to, you know, try and reduce the impacts of some of these things because, you know, when there's no regulations, things just spin out of control. But I think that's another thing that we need to start doing. And because, you know, let's say, for example, you know, Boga, the guy's a number 10 player. Already it's hard for him because every club is sending him on loan to isn't using him in his position. And every club he's going to is playing a defensive style where Boga has to track back. Now, how is Boga improving as a player because he can track back? I've always thought this tracking back thing is complete nonsense because it's just managers. A manager can teach you how to press and how to defend. So really, for how obviously good a player is at following the manager's instructions shows you how good the manager is, in my opinion. But he's another guy that's really struggled to this approach. I just think, let's say, for example, Marseille, when they wanted him, oh, Berger's available for this much. Okay, we're going to buy him. Imagine Berger at Marseille for the next 2 years. I don't think he would have played for Ivory Coast. And I think he'd probably be, you know, in a much better situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first point you make is really interesting because if you look at the relationship we've started to form with Borussia Mönchengladbach after the Christensen loan, when we create that kind of relationship where they've got an extremely positive experience with one of our players, you would expect the club to then capitalise that. I mean, I know we've spoken about Jake Clark-Salter not getting the move there because we were a bit disorganised. Well, I say a bit. We were incredibly disorganised in the summer. But you think, okay, right, we can't send a centre half there. Let's send one of our best midfielders. Ruben. Let's send Ruben to Borussia Mönchengladbach for a season, for example, or 2 seasons. We don't seem to continue. We don't seem to have that kind of thinking or that mentality that kind of suggests, okay, we can establish, even if we know it's not a formal ownership of a club, with Mönchengladbach. Same with, I think we spoke about this before a few times, about maybe looking at clubs in Portugal. You know, I mean, a lot of very good players coming from there, very technical leagues, still physical enough that, you know, you're not going to just drop a player in there and they're going to get used to not having any sort of physical competition. But, I mean, besides the top maybe 4 clubs, there are loads of clubs that would take 4 or 5 players, top players, because it would give them a chance to compete for a season. If it's a 2-season loan, whatever it's going to be. No, but it's kind of creative thinking. And I know that there's probably loads of FIFA regulations and UEFA regulations around doing these sorts of deals, but City getting around it. I think, of course, Red Bull own about 300 million clubs at this point. You know, there has to be some kind of way for us to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. There has to be some sort of way to kind of to start using it. And you know, we don't always have to send players to the Championship or to League One. You know,
it's never helps any player.
No, never helps any player. You know, I think we've had so much more success by sending guys to Courtois to Atletico Madrid and obviously Christensen in Germany. So, you know, why do we keep sending young players? I mean, you can talk about the culture and stuff like that, but I remember when I spoke to Lewis Baker, I mean, the experience of living in Holland and being away from England, I mean, that made him, in his head, that was what was making him into a better player. So, you know, you take some of the top players, you send them to a club, even if it's a group of 3 or 4 of them. Okay, so we're going to send 4 of our best under-18s to Penfield or whoever, some random club in Portugal. So, okay, we want you to massively improve this club. Give you 2 years. Do what we did with Vitesse, send Andy Myers over there to help coach them if you really need to, you know. Send a coach with them, send something and just challenge them to improve the club. I mean, what bigger challenge than that? Still getting paid by Chelsea, living in Portugal, absolutely fantastic. you know, and you've got a real chance of making an impact on the team. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of stuff I think you could do creatively. I think what you're saying is exactly spot on. But it comes to not having a set philosophy at the club.
Exactly, and I don't know. It's such a typical. I don't know if it's a typical Chelsea thing or if it's just the culture of how things work in England. Because in the Premier League and in England, it really is a league where innovation doesn't play a part. Because I don't know, maybe people are too old or too stupid, or they just don't. You know, they don't see the bigger picture. But you know, this loan system, this loan model, you know, when you're not getting as much money for these players, you know, let's say, what if clubs decide, actually, we don't want these guys or anything? You know, how many, we're starting to see more players per season. You have to wait until January before they can find loan moves. That's how out of hand it's getting. It's going to reach a point, especially with your Hudson-Odois and Sterlings. I mean, really, they should be known now. They shouldn't be at the youth academy just now. So already, some of the top ones are even struggling to get loan moves due to how this is. And it, you know, again, I'm seeing this inefficiency. I'm not seeing too many positives for the future. You know, Chelsea, to get back to maximising everything, get more feeder clubs. If you've got to go, I mean, Man City, Almeria were in the league below when they had links with them and discussions with them, obviously sign them up to work with each other and have that relationship. Yeah, let's target some Bundesliga 2 teams. You know, that's because we can then send, let's say, a 17-year-old there, for example. Let's get some Spanish League 2 teams. That's how you can do that. I think I was told before in regards to Portuguese teams, you know, due to how they like to finance players, where, you know, it's like you know, this company's owns 30%. Yeah, exactly. It's like it doesn't make any financial sense, and you know, they'd rather use their own players to hopefully get a profit for them. But you know, I don't know, really, I don't know. But that's actually links to another question, actually. You know, of course, you were talking about Lewis Baker now. You know, this might be pretty cheeky of me to ask, but what do you think might happen in January? Because there's no way in hell he can still be in Middlesbrough.
I mean, it's a tough one for him, because I think the sort of general thing in the summer was that he was pretty much kept around because we needed additional people for training. I mean, that really kind of is the reality. But I mean, he never,
isn't it? Yeah, after the fantastic,
I mean,
he had, you know,
really given any kind of opportunity in any of the sort of pre-season matches to play in midfield. I think he had a few minutes here and there, but there was clearly no intention of using him. And you know, the kind of sad reality for him was that he did have a lot of Premier League kind of loans on the table. I'm not going to mention clubs and names and stuff like that, but I mean, there were probably, I think, 4 that I was told of that were interested in him at the beginning of the summer. But obviously, as they move through this, you know, they're not waiting for,
of course,
they're going to go and buy players. They're going to go and get other players in. And by the time it came to, you know, sort of looking for a place to go, he still had a Premier League loan on the table. But, you know, it was a club that basically the midfield doesn't exist for them. So what's the point of sending Baker to them?
Yeah,
probably just purely because he's a good set piece taker was what they were looking at. So, you know, he has to take the next best thing available, which is at Middlesbrough. Lots of promises made to him about playing time and playing style. And, you know, very, very quickly, that really didn't come to fruition. You know, there was talks of him falling out with the manager and other things of that nature. Yeah. You know, they put another guy in now, and I don't think really things are improving for him there. Maybe he just hasn't settled. But, no, I mean, he's not the first player who's gone to a championship club and it hasn't worked out for him. I would imagine, and again, this isn't. I haven't spoken to Lewis or his agent for a couple of weeks now, but I can't imagine that he will be staying there unless something massively drastic changes. Which again, you know, they're not going to change the entire, you know, way that they're trying to do things because of a player that's on loan. So I think he'll probably end up at another club. Personally, I'd bring him back and get him back into the fold. You know, it might be a little while to just sort of bring him in and just keep him around the club, because I mean, basically, we've thrown a season of his career away anyway. You know, if you send someone on loan in January, you've got to start creating all of those kind of relationships with the management, relationships with teammates and players. And, you know, you're looking at February, March before maybe he gets a run of games, and then the season's done. So, I mean, it's in terms of the season for him anyway. So why not bring him in and maybe try and get some use out of him? You know, we've got a lot of games coming up. We've got a lot of games where we can use someone in midfield who can actually have a shot. I think it's been one of the major things this season. So, potentially bring him back in, but I mean, my gut feeling will be that he'll go out on loan to another club. Hopefully, it's a bit more of a success, but the cards really are not stacked in his favour to have a successful loan. I don't really recall that many people going out on loan in January and completely tearing it up. So, you know, potentially a really lost season for him, and it's really down to the club. You know, you can talk about him not getting into the Middlesbrough team, but you know, there's a load of reasons why people on loan don't get into certain teams, and there's loads of things that happen in clubs that we aren't privy to as fans. So just making that a very basic analysis that he's not good enough to play for Borough when he's pretty much been one of the best players in the Eredivisie for the past 2 seasons is a little bit simple, but hopefully that can sort itself out if he gets a decent loan.
Exactly.
In the next few weeks.
Yeah, let's pray that happens, because again, you guys, another article you guys should read of Joe is obviously, if you don't know the backstory, he was actually invited by Lewis, you know, his dad and his agent to actually go to Holland to see him. Obviously, he saw how he was training, saw him playing live. It really got an even better understanding of how things work behind the scenes in terms of player development, what to look for in terms of you know, the markings of a good player, and you know, just how the industry works in general. So that's definitely an article to read, because I'm seeing a few comments of people thinking, oh, you know, Lewis Baker isn't a good player, without really understanding. I mean, if you just ask yourselves, why do you think Lewis Baker's a bad player? I'm sure you couldn't think of a real, you know, specific reason for why he isn't good enough. I suggest you read that article to really understand, you know, what it is that makes a very good player. So, you know, I'm going to put that in the description after the end of this live stream. But another point I did want to touch upon is obviously the fact that, you know, there's always a lot of, you know, transfer stories in regards to players linked with a club, for example, and, you know, stuff of that nature. I think that a lot of people don't necessarily understand, you know, let's say how, you know, the media's part in terms of, you know, linking players to a club. A lot of people seem to think that stuff's just made up, for example. But if you could offer some insight in terms of actually how it works, you know, are there truths to the stuff? Is it used in a tactical manner for other players, you know, etc., etc.?
Yeah. I mean, there's generally a few kind of ways that this goes. You know, I think through social media, I've been very fortunate to become friends with people who are football agents. You know, it's not really kind of me seeking out agents, but that's their kind of role. You're talking about even people in kind of lower leagues, League One, Championship, etc. Yeah. First thing to say is, you know, a lot of transfer deals. There are so many that almost happen. And you wouldn't quite believe the numbers of players that almost moved to a club. And I think, you know, one of the agents that I was speaking to was saying, you know, he had a player who was moving from League One to the Championship. 98% is what he was saying. It was done. He was happy to get the champagne out. Literally 6 hours later, club pulled it because they went and got a slightly better player in their opinion. So, you know, and when the media reported things, a lot of this is based on, you know, information from agents, from clubs. I never feel, again, I've seen some of the stuff on Twitter with recently, some of the stories and stuff that come out. No one, as far as I'm aware, in terms of media or YouTubers or whatever, hasn't come from a relevant source. Now, the source could be in terms of putting information out there. It could be to drum up interest in a player. It could be, okay, Chelsea. I mean, we always used to get linked with players that we were never interested in because that player wants a better contract at their current club.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be, you know, again, if you look at, for example, the Willian move is always a classic that people explain to me. You know, Willian was 99% a Tottenham player. Then he was 100% a Chelsea player 3 minutes later. That's how quickly the transfer market works. So when people are presenting information, if it's an hour old, it could be, you know, 7 million% wrong. That's just the nature of the market and how quickly things work. But no, I mean, you know, people don't present information that they completely have made up or fabricated in thin air. Generally, it's information that's fed from an agent. So said it could be to produce a new contract, it could be to drum up interest. I mean, in the Alex Sandro case, for example, you know, general kind of I've been sort of told that we are interested in him, but for extremely cut price. You know, we're only really entertaining it at maybe £20 million less than what they're quoting at the moment. So
same thing I've been told too. Exactly. I did the fee I was told was between 30 to 35 million. That's
it's almost half price what we were sort of looking at in the summer. Which is, I mean, that's an entirely different topic. But Juventus are very keen to sell him. They're leaking a lot of information. His agent is pushing a lot of information out there. And you can see from the reaction just on social media that Chelsea fans are getting onto the club saying, why aren't you buying this player? He's only X amount of money. But that's the kind of things that clubs look to create now, that agents look to create. They look to create that kind of atmosphere or that kind of narrative around their players. Chelsea don't buy Sandro. It's, blame Chelsea are cheapskates, etc. Chelsea might be only interested in him for £40 million, £45 million, whatever.
Yeah.
but all of the kind of emphasis is pushed on from Juventus and from the agent to make it look like it was Chelsea who weren't willing to do the deal. So again, that's a very good example. Same thing, it's just how it works. These players are it's a job for them. It's a case of drumming up interest. It's a case of getting more money. It's a case of getting a better contract. And if you leak some information to someone, they present it and it's true. This DiMarzio guy is meant to be sort of the transfer guru. I mean, he doesn't get everything right. And this is a guy who I imagine has top agents on the phone to him saying, yeah, Pogba's agreed a deal with City or such and such, he's going there, and then he ends up at United. That's just how things work.
Exactly.
But it's, this kind of aggressive manner of saying, a certain player is that someone is interested in. We probably are in most cases. We are probably interested in the player. There's a varying degree of interest. There's a varying degree of, price points that we're willing to deal at. Or the agent is just drumming up interest. It's been a class. And the thing that's irritated me, particularly some of the stuff I was reading the other day, is these are people that I imagine have been supporting the club for a long time. Yeah. I mean, I remember sort of every summer, probably from 2004 till 2010, when Roberto Carlos was being linked with Chelsea, just purely to get another 10 grand a week at Real Madrid. It's what happens, and someone in the media reports it. Chelsea are interested in Roberto Carlos because Roberto Carlos' agent said so.
Yeah.
The big one for me is this Biabiani guy, who I think.
Is that agent now?
Yeah. His agent was linking him to Chelsea. I've never heard his name mentioned in any conversations with people from Chelsea, but that almost became a done thing that Chelsea were interested in that player. So, it's just a way in some cases to drumming up interest. Again, if you're promoting a player, just look at someone like Alexis Sanchez. You want to keep his name in the media. You want to keep, your client's name out there for people to be interested in to buy him.
Of course.
It's not always cut and dry. And the biggest rule of thumb and the biggest thing that I've learned, particularly from talking to agents, is that until the guy's got the shirt on the website, don't believe anything really, because it can change, as I said, from minute to minute.
Exactly, and that's the key thing that people need to remember. Obviously with news. Again, as Joe's been saying, it does change from minute to minute. You always want to know stuff that happens afterwards. But that's how quickly things can change. Clubs, they don't just look at one target and then that's it. There's a ton of targets. It's like they've cast a net out and then they do negotiations to really see if this player's interested. And, there's so many different factors before a player finally comes and, signs for their club. So, of course, if it's a Don Ballon story, you can probably just ignore that. I think I read something ridiculous today that Mourinho's demanded Kante for 165 million. And if United don't get him next summer, he's going to go to Paris Saint-Germain. I mean, there's probably truth in regards to obviously Mourinho and Paris Saint-Germain. Exactly, because Mourinho will use the PSG links to get more favour at Manchester United. That's how football works. That's how the industry works. If you're going to be angry afterwards about, but I was told Mourinho's going to go to Paris Saint-Germain, blah blah blah. You're kind of doing yourself a disservice if you think like that.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, if you look back to the summer, I mean, there was so many rumours coming out from reputable journalists. When you're talking about people, for example, I mean, for people who don't realise, I think Matt Law probably has one of the best sources at the club. I mean, I think in some cases the club actually feed him stories to put out there.
Yeah.
Generally, if he reports something, it's you've got a good degree of saying, okay, either it has happened as he's reported it, or something. It's kind of a version of the truth. So, when he's talking about Conte going, I remember people saying it, and when he didn't go, people were like, "Oh yeah, you've completely made that up," and blah blah blah. Stuff. As I said, stuff happens can go to all the way up to 99% of something happening, and it changes within 3 seconds. I mean, Chelsea fans, just using the Willing example over and over again, should know. This is medical done, flights paid for, hotel paid for. Within 2 hours of him doing his Tottenham medical, and basically within minutes of him signing a contract, he came to Cobham and was a Chelsea player. I mean, it's that quick. It's the same day.
Was another example. He was gonna buy Tottenham, and then he saw allegedly the story is he was in a helicopter. He saw the sample.
Saw the
hotel. Exactly. Allegedly, I think Spurs kept him waiting for some reason,
and they didn't know who he was.
Exactly. He didn't like that, so he went to their next club near, and thank God that happened. So so exactly, people got to realize that type of stuff, because I always got a lot of stick with the whole Mahrez thing, but we were talking to Mahrez. That was definitely happening. Yeah, of course. I'll take the
hotel. I mean, he was in the hotel, which is about. I mean, you go to games, didn't you? I mean, it's like a 10-minute walk from Stamford Bridge. It's not a. a reach to say that he was primarily there probably to talk to someone from the club.
Of course.
You know, and again, it's the same thing. You know, if the club were interested in bringing him down for chats and discussions, you know, I think make the same point again. It could go all the way to 95%. Yeah, let's do this, and then they go, you know what? Maybe let's not. Let's go with Pedro, or let's keep someone else in there. No, it can go so far and not happen. It doesn't mean that that a lot of the information is incorrect. And I think people equate with the fact that if we don't sign someone, that everything leading up to that point was not true, and that's just not the case.
Exactly. Well, that's good that we clarified that. But you know, just a side note to Mahrez, I feel sorry for the guy. I mean, how many times does he take time out of his day to negotiate with clubs, this, that, only to be, you know, no one wants to pay his fee.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God. I mean, this is the thing about football. He was one of probably the main reasons why Leicester won the league, in my opinion.
Yeah.
His individual class, you know, in terms of getting goals, making assists, etc. You know, Leicester will probably never ever reach that again. Come on, the guy made history for the club. Don't make it so hard for him that, you know, you're stopping him from thriving himself in his career. It's just so annoying. I mean, he's one guy I've always loved to see at Chelsea. And probably to wrap up this live stream, what kind of, I mean, let's say, you know, you can speak directly. Let's say, you know, Roman wants to talk to you. He doesn't want to listen to Marina anymore. He's saying, Joe, what type of targets do you feel that we should bring to the club? And, you know, what's the type of players you'd like to see?
I mean, assuming if we're going down sort of the youth route and we're not going to buy, you know, spend 40-50 million pounds on people who might play 20 games a season for us. I mean, ideally, I think Alexandro is a no-brainer. You know, I think a lot of people are talking about Marcos Alonso. I mean, the easiest way for me to explain this is that Chelsea had Wayne Bridge, and then they got Ashley Cole. It's the perfect analogy. Wayne Bridge, good player, okay player for Chelsea. Ashley Cole was unbelievable.
Yeah,
you don't not go for Ashley Cole because you have Wayne Bridge, and that's the easiest way that I can explain it to people. You know, he completes more key passes, he has more assists, he's better at crossing, he's more athletic, he's better defensively. Alonso scores fantastic through kicks. I'm not going to dismiss the fact that I love the fact that he's a great set piece taker, but at the top level, I know that I can leave Alexandro on the left, and I don't need to put 7 people over there to defend against just someone who's got a bit of pace. That's my massive concern with Alonso, is that, I mean, you saw the Norwich game, or not, sorry, it might have been the Norwich game recently. He played against, it might have been the FA Cup game. Someone that, I mean, it was like a championship player, very quick. I mean, was just roasting the entire game. You know, so, I mean, Sandro would be the first person I'd be looking at. I'd really like to go for Dybala at Juventus. Definitely, I mean, the kind of forward that I'd love to see at the club. You know, don't get me wrong, I love Diego Costa just bashing people up and stuff like that. That just speaks to me as a person who likes that kind of physical forward. But we're going to change the way we play a little bit. You know, even if we're going to play with 2 strikers, I mean, he can play the withdrawn role, he can play up front, but you can imagine Hazard and him linking up. Then that's the kind of football you're talking about. And maybe one more player. I would have loved to have signed Tolisso in the summer, so the guy who's gone to Bayern Munich. But I mean, I'd be looking probably for probably someone in midfield. No names really at the moment, but maybe just someone who is maybe sort of Cesc Fabregas's creativity, but maybe a bit more box to box. Tolisso would have been great, but probably someone in that kind of mold. 3 players, I think that would have probably been about 180 million quid, maybe 200 million pounds. Pretty much what we spent in the summer, but instead of having 5 backups, you've got a load of academy players in there, and Zoomers and Van Hinkels and people of that kind of level. So
you're sorted then, exactly. I don't know. Sometimes it just doesn't seem too hard, but I think maybe the only thing I can think of is that, I mean, you know, maybe club officials at the top are trying to obviously further their careers behind the scenes by, you know, pushing certain agendas and, you know, etc. I think maybe the Ross Barkley one, you know, if I'm Conte, to me, that signing is, you know, that's it. You're never going to have what you want.
Conte wouldn't have known him if he bumped into him in the hallway. Let's be perfect. I mean, that's not a slight on Ross Barkley. I'm just, there was no way Antonio Conte, particularly considering he's been injured for nearly 9 months. There's no way Conte has any idea who he is.
Of course, exactly. And it's just like, you know, I think kind of Chelsea fans kind of do this disservice to themselves. It's like any new shiny toy that's shown in front of them, excitement comes. And I mean, are people forgetting this is the Ross Barkley that was getting heavily criticized last season? So I mean, just even watch Match of the Day, constantly getting criticized for, you know, not being assertive in games, not you know, always picking the easy passes, etc. Now, Now, surely, example, really how it should have been is, I mean, an example is Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale was a guy that would only be good for half a season. The season where he was consistent throughout the entire year.
He went to Madrid.
Exactly, went to Madrid. Now, Barkley has never, ever shown that. So why are people getting so excited? Normally you got to prove that you can play for a club like Chelsea.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many factors against it. The thing I found the funnest was Conte kept referring to him as an investment signing. I thought,
we are going to sell you in the summer.
I know, exactly, because he is. Because for an English guy, 15 million.
Yeah.
Next, the West Ham will buy him for 30 million if he put him on the market tomorrow. Or a club of that nature will pay double the money. So that's a great piece of business right there. The fact that, with Conte, how long does it take players to get used to his, pragmatic system? Barkley, you're going to see him in the midfield too. No, would you really play Barkley over Willian and Pedro? I'm not quite too sure. Just it maybe over Pedro. I'll probably say yeah. But over Willian,
I can see that. Yeah.
If anything, to me, now here's the thing. I'm not going to lie. I do actually think Barkley has ability. I used to remember him from 2 years ago. I remember that fantastic goal he scored against Newcastle, and I was like,
the whippage.
Yeah, I mean, this is an English player. He doesn't play anything like one at all.
Yeah,
he has the ability. I think personally, Ross Barkley is a player for next season. So in terms of investment, I know I come across as a bit cynical. I mean, I am. I'll admit, but again, investment in terms of for next season, he's a type of player that is most likely to suit lots of different managers' needs if that ever happens to be the case. I do think it's a piss take though, because it's unnecessary competition for your Rubens and other players of that nature, because he hasn't really even proven that he should be playing for one of the big clubs in the world. So that is a frustration, but he does have something about him. I will give him that, but I'm not expecting to do anything until next year, really.
I mean, the main thing I've heard about Barkley, and this is from maybe 2 or 3 Premier League scouts that I've been in touch with over the past year, just general asking them sort of questions about analysing players and things like that, is, I mean, all 3 of them have said just complete lack of football intelligence. Now, when I think of that and I think of the demands that Conte places on players, particularly positionally, I mean, it doesn't seem a huge fit. And, you're talking about 24, 25. Are these the kind of natural kind of instincts or natural football intelligence? You could be a really, really stupid guy in real life, but I mean, if you're intelligent in terms of football, that's a completely different kind of intelligence. And that so many people pointing this out, that he just doesn't really, you've kind of got to talk him through the game all the time. Does he need Cesc Fabregas to stand next to him for the entire game and say, okay, Ross, now you've got to stand there, now you've got to move here? That's my one concern. If that improves, then I think we've probably got a fairly good player. But when you're talking about why a lot of big clubs haven't been in for him for the past 2-3 seasons, because you're exactly right. For an English player, he's got loads of talent, but why have City not gone in for him? Why have Arsenal not gone in for him? Why have United? I think it's just a general perception that he's not very bright when it comes to football. And a lot of these managers demand a lot of intelligence from their players, whether it's defensively, whether it's even with the ball. It's no point just being a kind of park player, or like a cage football player where you've got loads of ability but you don't know where everyone is on the pitch. You don't know what kind of movements you should be doing. So that's my one concern. I mean, hopefully, again, if it doesn't work out, I think we'll make a profit on him. But I'm kind of like you. I think I'm very much in the wait and see. Wait and see what he does. And again, I think next season is a perfect time to actually look at him. If he plays this season, I'll be quite not impressed. I'll be quite surprised, would be the word I'll be saying, if he gets going this season, considering the injury, considering how much he's got to learn and pick up. But you never know. He could bang in the winning goal in the European Cup final and become a hero.
And that's what it takes for fans.
That's what I care about. Yeah,
exactly.
Screw the philosophy talks. We'll start again. We'll blow it up and start again.
Exactly. But I don't know. I kind of think that I mean, of course, I find it so fascinating, the player analytical side, the experts behind, they really understand what makes a player great, good, okay, decent, and, bad. I mean, afterwards, you can tell me maybe some type of like social media accounts to follow that, that specialize in stuff like that. But I've always felt like, even though I'm no expert at all, but I think I've always had a decent eye. That whole Bakayoko thing, I predicted beforehand for how his season was going to pan. I was getting criticized so much because people are like, no, but he's better than Matic. Can't you see? I mean, he's tall, he's you know, he tackles, all that
he's
nonsense.
definitely tall, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he's black. You know, when you're black, you're stronger, you know. Let's just be serious.
Yes.
But yeah, yeah, exactly. But and yeah, exactly. As Mickey's saying, he's good looking too. Got a nice, you know, nice hair as well. But I just knew the struggles that he'd be facing this year, because it's what was going to be expected from him this year was so alien. On top of the fact that, I'm not going to lie, I do think if he had the proper development in terms of going from club A to B before finally reaching C, I think with the basic attributes he does have, he could be something. It's not going to happen at Chelsea, where we don't care about developing players. Really, his model should have been to follow Yaya Toure, because Yaya Toure wasn't Yaya Toure when he was, you know, in Belgium and then in Greece, for example. You know, he became that because he was slowly going through clubs where, you know, he was playing in better systems, better players around him, you know, playing much more offensively. Of course, Barca really just helped transform him to a completely different player. You know, that's really the development that Bakayoko really needed, because, you know, he is very limited as a player.
That's what Makaleli said. Yeah,
I mean, exactly.
There was a really, really interesting, wasn't actually an interview, but he gave probably about maybe 4 or 5 paragraphs on Bakayoko, and he kind of predicted that he would probably struggle with his first season. You know, he needed to adjust to the tempo of the Premier League. You needed to get used to the fact that you've got no time. Yeah. And the thing is, if your touch is off in League One, particularly if you're playing for Monaco, you've probably still got 6 yards of space around you. In the Premier League,
exactly,
it doesn't matter who you're playing against, whatever level of team. At least the first 60 minutes, teams are going to be completely up your backside, kicking you, pulling you, trying to win the
countries don't have your Walters or your Bardsleys or players like that. Yeah. That's why, you know, the Premier League's full of players like that.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. You know, that's the thing. You can't just rely on the fact that you are, you know, team pace and power. I mean, you've got to have a bit more about you. And I think that kind of development step from Monaco. I mean, you know, in the Monaco team, let's be, you know, played very, very well, but his role was to get the ball and give it to the better players, which, you know, is fine. You know, lots of players get away with and make a career of that.
I honestly think if you put Lee Catamore on that team with the players, he would be looking decent because of that.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those things, and when you start putting on him the kind of responsibilities to be a really definitive player in like the final third, and obviously doing a lot more midfield, spreading play, dictating play, it's a huge jump from what he's used to doing. And I think you're right. You know, I think I really hope it comes together for him, because I think in there is a player that can potentially come out. But I mean, when, you know, people were talking about, we're sort of signing the next Michael Essien from Lyon. I mean, Essien was absolutely dominant at Lyon, you know, French Player of the Year, won 2 league titles, absolutely tearing it up in the Champions League, and was ready for Premier League football. But he did his apprenticeship, maybe 1 year at Monaco, maybe he needed 2-3 years there, you know, to really refine himself and come through. But I mean, I know he's getting a lot of stick at the moment, which I don't necessarily agree with. Because
people don't understand the context behind it. I think this is that really annoys me, especially with the world we live in today. No one cares about the context of things. It's always it's such a black and white world. There's no gray areas. It's really, you know, so annoying. Maybe with Bakayoko, I don't know. I kind of feel one of the main reasons why I think one of the main reasons why a lot of players have recently been pushing for clubs when maybe they're not too ready for them is the fact that it's a World Cup. I think every player wants to play for the country. I think that was probably one of the biggest reasons I've been told why Baka wanted to, you know, push a move away from Monaco, and why he felt Chelsea was the best club for him, because he's thinking, if I'm playing beside Kante, my World Cup chances are even higher. You know, I'm definitely got a place in the squad, but you know, you got your Rabios in front of him, you got your Tolisos in front of him, and Zonzi. I mean, honestly, Pogba. I mean, honestly, I think Zonzi really was a player. If he wanted to bring in a player, maybe is he better than Matic? I mean, he could. I mean, I think you need a lot of. I mean, it's debatable, but he's probably the like-for-like.
Yeah, like-for-like style. Yeah, he would have been the stylistic choice.
Exactly. You can pass it and everything. You know, he would have been that player. Don't know why we didn't go in for him, but you know, I think this could be. I don't know. Maybe this links back to, obviously, you know, young players and development, because, you know, Bakayoko's only just turned 23. He is quite young. I think he's only just got above 100 games in his career now. I think maybe Goretzka has a bit more than him, but only by a few. I'm not too sure, but and this actually links to another point. Remember Gael Kakuta? Now, I saw this link to an article, I think, yesterday.
You read the same piece.
You read the same piece. I thought it was a really enlightening one. I'm happy that he's starting to show some talent now. And Omiyons, from what I've been hearing, I mean, I've completely butchered the club's name. We're seeing some of the highlights, and he's looking at the. This is the player I remember from the youth academy. His skills, his flair, and everything. And I think the article was referring to Guy Hillian, a Chelsea scout. I don't know if we still a scout there right now, but it seems like with Kakir, basically the reason why his career became what it was due to impatience and rushing things too quickly. And I think that can affect a lot of the talented players. I don't know if it's a French thing; it'd probably be too easy for me to say that, but I do kind of think maybe Bakayoko has made the wrong mistake, because at Chelsea, I mean, we've seen him this year. If you told me that we're going to be going in for another midfield player for next year, would I be surprised? No, I wouldn't. Now, does Bakayoko necessarily need extra competition in front of him? That's the last thing he needs. He needs consistent game time, which probably won't be coming as much now,
Yeah, I mean, a slight aside, actually, this is, I suppose, kind of tying up some of the stuff we've talked about, but the tweet that Conte has actually come out in the media and saying that we did miss out on Van Dijk. And this actually ties back to some stuff that I was saying about Andreas Christensen, that that we wanted to buy another centre-back as well as Rudiger. A lot of people were saying that wasn't true. I think this kind of points out that we did want to buy 2 centre-backs in the summer. Probably Van Dijk and Bonucci, I think, probably were the 1 and 2. And the amount of luck that's actually got Andreas Christensen starting. I mean, you're talking about missing out on Van Dijk, missing out on Bonucci, Cahill getting sent off in the first game, Luiz getting sent off in the second. And then not only that, Christensen playing fantastically well against Spurs, I think it was, then gets dropped for the next game. So obviously that wasn't good enough to keep you in the team. And it took Luiz to have this massive drastic falling out with Conte for Christensen to get a run of games. And what people realise that, if they're good enough, they'll play. I mean, this is one player who has been, I think a lot of people, particularly in the analytics community, were saying that Christensen, well, I mean, personally watching him play for Mönchengladbach, he's probably been this good for about 18 months. He's been at this kind of level. We've almost missed out on seeing him in the team because of 6 things potentially that have gone in his favour. So, it's not just a fact about, if they're good enough, they'll play. If they're good enough, they may get an opportunity if a load of stuff works in their favour. I think this is a really good example of that.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. And, let's not even forget, we tried to go in for your Stars and your Romagnolis before. I remember, I think I wrote something on We Ain't Got No History a while back. I think I really went into detail in terms of, letting people know why Christensen was actually superior to both of them. And I used stats and past stats and everything to highlight exactly why, and from then on, Christensen doesn't give any fouls away. And really, when I look at the quality of a defender, that's the first thing I look at, because I think, when you're a young defender, really, sometimes I think the defending is not necessarily about improving, it's knowing when to do things, how to do things in a way. It's like it takes experience to get better at that, because it's all about how do I react in these certain situations I'm in. And then obviously I've been playing for 6 years, I've been in this situation how many times, I know how to deal with it. But with Christensen, because he has such a very early career, you can see the intelligence behind every single thing. And anytime I look at him, I actually have a lot of fun watching him, because I really try to look at all the nuances he does. And Christensen, I think, will never be a defender that will get a massive highlight reel. He's always going to be the guy where, like you're saying, the people, who focus on player analytics and stuff like that, they see everything good that he does, because it can just be a shift of his body slightly. He could be positioning himself just like a yards to the right-hand side to block the guy from running at him. Or I'm going to slow this guy down because I see Kante is going to be coming in the next few seconds. It's all of that type of stuff. I think when Christensen naturally bulks up because 21, you're not supposed to be the size of a Chiellini or Boateng right now, because they were all skinny, racks themselves when they were young. When he naturally bulks up, I'm thinking we could be seeing one of the I sounds arrogant, I think seeing one of the greatest ever defenders really of this generation, and I think could be remembered in history with what we're seeing with Christensen. And he's got the good looks, the model looks to go with it too. I mean, he's got everything in his favor.
He, for me, I think he is the perfect embodiment of what central defending will be like going forward. And I mean, one of my biggest complaints about modern central defenders is a lot of them can't defend. And
Yeah.
they're basically failed midfielders who aren't as good in midfield, so they get pushed back a bit and they become defenders when they can play it a bit. But I think the thing that really separates Christensen is that even at this age, rarely makes mistakes, and it's his decision making, and it's all to do with his decision making, which is all to do with his intelligence. It's
Exactly.
when to press the forward, when to not press him, when to nip in, when to hold. If you actually look at his stats, and this is really why I don't like stats for defenders. He doesn't really do a lot. He doesn't have many tackles, he doesn't have many interceptions, but it's a bit like Ricardo Carvalho, where and this is really the comparison that I like with Carvalho, is that Carvalho only ever did something if he really had to, and you see Christensen will only go to ground if he has to. He only commits to stuff and he has to, but his positioning and the way that he manipulates centre forwards, and again, I think talking back to the Bakey thing, one of the really cool things was I got to sit with a Chelsea scout and watch a Vitesse, I think like under 16 game, and just listen to him how he was talking about players. There was a centre back who must have been about 5'3", and I was like, why is this kid playing at the back? The guy he was playing next to was about 6'4", and he was about 13. But he was like, just watch him. Every time the player came there, it was the way that he controlled the forward, he controlled, kind of controlling him without the ball, and all these sort of little things that he was pointing out. And Christensen does that so well. And I think you're right. I mean, I think potentially for Chelsea at least, there's always this kind of very famous story that John Terry picked the number 26 because he wanted to be one better than Gianfranco Zola, obviously one number 25. I think Christensen might have chosen 27 because I think he's taken that challenge up on himself. Now, I could see that being something that comes out a little bit later. JT has spoken very, very highly of him in the past. I think particularly obviously living in Denmark, I think some of the comments around him at the moment are very positive. But no, I completely agree. I think he's the embodiment of what the modern central defender will be. And if you compare him, if we're playing with a 2 or a 3 or whatever, I think if you compare him with a really big physical centre half, you could get that kind of JT Gallas kind of combo again, or JT and Carvalho.
Yeah.
And then you're set.
I mean, honestly, if I don't see a defensive duo of Zuma and Christensen in the future, then I would have given up all hope with Chelsea, because we've got probably the best defensive partnership in the world in the next probably 2 years.
Christensen controls it, and Zuma just literally does what Zuma does best, which is annihilate people. He's got the recovery speed. Christensen sleeps.
Zuma, I mean, he's another guy that really, really pains me, and I just think he's unfortunate because you get certain managers like your Contes, your Rafa Benitez's, where once you're injured, you're not getting straight back in. Especially when Conte's, let's be serious, had no history of watching them. People keep forgetting he was managing Italy. His job was focusing with his backroom staff on what the squad was going to be, how they were going to play, all these runnings of things. He was only speaking to Chelsea in February too. The Euros then was around, like 4 months after that. There's no way in hell he's watching every single Chelsea player or knows anything about them. I'll never, maybe that could be the case if you tell me, I don't know, but I don't think, just using my logic, that's the reality. So I don't think Conte's ever really seen or assessed Zuma. With Zuma, I think, he's another underrated guy, because when I see the elegance in his tackling, and I think that's another trait, which is, we know that a lot of defenders can't defend anymore. I think Zuma's another guy that he only goes to, sometimes I think he goes to ground because he's that good, so he just enjoys.
He likes it. He does like a slide tackle.
Exactly. That's his trademark thing. And, his leap in the air, I used to think, obviously we've seen Drogba and Ivanovic, but I think Zuma is probably better aerially. I think the only thing Zuma needs to improve on, people keep saying this is passing, which is complete nonsense. I think the only thing Zuma needs to improve on is attacking the ball when it comes to the attacking set pieces, because I think
timing.
It's how to he needs to know how to control his headers. I think once he can develop that John Terry like ability, then I think you're looking at another fantastic defender, one of the generation's best defenders.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, this is one of the things that really irritates me with Zuma, and partly why I'm still not massively keen on Rudiger is I think Zuma is a much better defender than Rudiger, as in purely defensive. Rudiger's great on the ball, some of the passing and stuff like that, but he was getting tied in knots by Norwich at the weekend, and I think you're right. I think you said a lot earlier is that for me, a good centre half doesn't give away loads of fouls, and that's another thing that I see with him and it's unnecessary fouls. It's fouls where he gets overexcited, and I mean, Zuma's inability to pass. I mean, if you've got Christensen next to him, if you've got good players around him, do you really need both your centre backs to be able to ping 80-yard passes? You probably don't. I mean, that's I mean, it's nice to have. It's not an essential of him being a centre half for Chelsea.
And so it interjects, what does it mean to be able to pass? Because I think a lot of people just say Zuma can't pass. I was to ask, what is it that he can't do? Because I kind of think the only reason why people think that is, I mean, think about it. The guy is, I think, it doesn't he weigh more than 200 pounds. He's ridiculously dense.
Yeah. It's a lot,
dense. So of course, if you're naturally heavy, you're not gonna look like Messi on the ball, Just because something is heavy foot doesn't mean there's no control behind it.
It's because he does look a bit awkward on the ball. He looks awkward because he's a massive guy. He's built like a rugby union player. But let's be perfectly honest, he has put in some of the best performances against the best players. Harry Kane, Aguero, marked him out of games. I mean, he marked Aguero out of the last couple of times he played them.
Exactly.
He put Aguero in his pocket. And I've not really seen any, not going to rip into Gary Cahill, but I mean, it's not something that I've seen Cahill do to anyone. I mean, Zuma did it to Harry Kane.
Found out Cahill game, really. What is defining performance? I can't think. What's a defining Cahill? Probably just some of the goals he scored, but defensively,
we'll give him Munich. I'll give him Munich. That's fine. That's fine for me. But I think that was really But I mean, the thing with Cahill, and again, we're slightly deviating here, is I think. For kind of old school English defenders, like penalty box defenders is what typically what you call them. He's incredible. He blocks everything. He's so committed, but the game's moved on. And I think you can see that, I mean, this season, I mean, I think we've seen him trying a Rabona. We've seen him trying to do, I mean, that clip on Twitter where I don't know what he was trying to do, some sort of drag back, and then he ended up punting it into someone's face in the front row of the slower was one of the highlights that I've seen. But it's not his game, and I think. But as I said, Zuma defensively, I mean, big performances against top Premier League players.
Of course.
I think you're right. Put him next to Christensen. I'd love us to go 4 at the back. I'd love us to start playing 4-3-3 again. Have 6 players attacking.
I think the people keep forgetting the only reason why 3 at the back's become a thing is, here's the thing. Really, to break teams down, this is why the fullbacks have really evolved in modern day football. It's not like how they used to be when Gary Neville was around, for example. They have to really provide a lot more offensively, and they have to be much better technically. And the reason why wing backs have become a thing now is because due to the money involved in football, for example, your managers like your Contes, Mourinho's, etc. They're very pragmatic. They don't like the thought of there not being a flat back four, for example. But the thing is, you have to be more fluid when it comes to breaking down defensive teams, because when teams defend now, it's completely different in modern day football, because it's not about possession. No one cares about touching the ball. Teams can be drilled to play with 19% possession, 20% possession in the game. If you notice, as the years have gone on, remember a defensive performance, for example, when we played Barca in 2005, I think we had 39% possession, they had 61. That's now turned to teams having 70 plus. Now we're seeing times where teams are having 80 plus possession of the ball and teams are playing without it. So again, it's completely different. I think what's really helps is obviously the players are much fitter due to the science involved in football. Nutrition clubs are much more involved in in terms of how to treat players medically, whatever. And this is why it's so important. This is why fullbacks have become so important now, because they're the guys that help stretch the play, link the play up. Now, 3 at the back's only become a thing now because your pragmatic managers, they still don't like the idea of having 2 at the back. 3 at the back's the thing now, because that's enough defensive support behind them for them to not get a heart attack and worry. Exactly. And then and this is the thing, you don't have to play a 3 at the back. I mean, you see a lot of the big teams, your Barca's, your Bayern's, they're still not using 3 at the back. I mean, really, with Barca, and when you've got Kante as well, I mean, to me, you couldn't just have a 2 at the back and have Kante dropping deeper, because I think this season Kante's looking more like Makelele than he's ever had in any other season. So when you've got the reincarnation of Makelele, you can start playing 4 at the back.
Yeah, I mean, I think my only counter to the 4 at the back at the moment is I don't think we've got a left back who can play there.
Yes.
Again, people get onto me for my. It's not really a Marcus Alonso agenda. I'm just sort of saying really what I see in terms of his game. But this is not a guy who, given his kind of, I mean, particularly the lack of pace that he has, it's. I can't entrust him to defend a quarter of a pitch. I mean, he's only really got to look after a tiny bit of it now.
Of course.
That would be the one. But then that's why you buy Sandro, because Sandro can play left back. He can play left back. All right, okay. He's not going to be Ashley Cole defensively, but I mean, going forward particularly, I mean, he can play. He can get up and down the pitch perfectly. And the thing is, he's a very good defender as well.
Very.
But I mean, that's my thing. I mean, I'm very much a 4-3-3 person personally.
It's the best. That's the timeless formation that will be around forever, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
let's say that there's a reason that Ajax train it and have done since the 70s or whatever it is. That
exactly.
Rinus Michel's brought it into the club. There's a reason that Barcelona played it, exclusively for so many years. It's just, and I think for the Premier League as well. And I think what you're saying, that this problem of breaking down these defensive teams. I mean, in theory, if you've got so much possession, you're overloading the ball. You've really got your two centre backs and the holding midfielder. That's 3 players staying back. The rest of the team's forward. They're ahead of the ball. Left back, left wing, 2 midfielders, a centre forward, a right wing. I mean, you've got sort of 6-8 players. Probably 7 players ahead of the ball. Which I think at the moment in some games, this 3-5-2, it's just Hazard and Morata.
Exactly.
5 players being thrown forward. And if you get players who can play football, pass it around, all of a sudden the combination play comes in. It's easy to pull teams out of space and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to play with them. But, again, it's one of the things I would like to see happen at the club, and that be the formation we play.
Exactly. I think
a lot of players that suit it.
Thank you. And what you said is just a perfect point, because I really think now the future for big teams is really use of possession, because people, you've got to realize, when Arsenal were getting criticised, let's say 10 years ago, they play a lot of nice stuff, but they looked like they've been improvising all the time. Teams back then weren't playing with 25% of the ball. No. That was why they'd keep it a bit more. Now, when it's like I keep saying, I keep making this point of what's this emphasis on balance when other teams aren't playing with that type of balance at all. They're playing to
throw everyone forward sometimes. They have there's no shape or structure to some of their play. Exactly. Right? Some of it looks fantastic, but I mean, in some cases, you watch their shape, they're all over the place, but they've just got so many good players going forward that teams don't know how to deal with them.
Exactly. And also with these, uber defensive style of teams as well, most times when they get results, it tends to be a draw because they don't have any attacking support themselves. So really, and this is my biggest frustration with Conte, and I think it's always going to be justified. I've always felt with him, his game management in a game is awful. I think when it comes to setting up a team, which we've seen, I think the biggest example with Atletico Madrid away, he set it up perfectly because I'm sure he was confident in how to play against them and beat them. That's why we look so majestic against them. One of the best performances in a few years, that away game. Yeah,
that's one of the best Chelsea games I've seen.
Exactly. I mean, this was like, we're looking like, a top European class team. But, with Conte, when it's in the moment of the game, when he has to make that decision where it's like, the games where you drop points against your bottom half teams, which is unacceptable, to still end the game with 3 at the back. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's so, I'm not going to say Steve because it sounds disrespectful, but it's so frustrating because obviously a lot of times why these games our centre halves end up having more ball possession is because the front guys have no one to play to, so they're having to pass back all the time, and then it's just like I don't understand how Conte can be happy continuing with this. It just makes no sense to me because I think he's the reason why we've dropped so many unnecessary points. I think the game against City, again, when you see that Guardiola's counted you to not make any change in the game to give us the ascendancy when we're at home, I was completely baffled. And I kind of think that game really cemented for me that Conte isn't the guy to take us to another level because I think he too often he can be beaten tactically. If you make a change in a game, he'll never react to it or he reacts too slow.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one example that stands out to me this season has been the game at Everton away, where I mean we were kind of all over them in kind of a weird fashion where we weren't actually creating that many shooting opportunities. Yeah. Okay, this sort of goes back to the youth agenda as well, but I mean you've got You've got Callum Hudson-Odoi on the bench, who is one of the most exciting kids we've probably produced in 10 years.
Yeah.
Direct, fast, tricky, will shoot. He's going to have a go. And you look at the bench, and what do you do? You swap Moses for Zappacosta. And then Zappacosta comes on and puts one of the single worst crosses that I've ever seen. I think it actually cleared whatever end is that's the end of Goodison. I mean, it went about 6 miles in the air, and it made absolutely no difference to the game whatsoever. I mean, I can understand, Mourinho sort of 1.0 before, he kind of lost the plot a bit, would chuck on Damien Duff and put Damien Duff at left back.
Yeah.
It's like putting Hazard at left back or putting Hazard at left wing back to get more attackers onto the pitch. That was what Mourinho used to do before he went sort of psychotic post-Madrid. But those kind of changes that really kind of affected games. Or, he would chuck on more attackers or anything, really. I just think so many substitutions that he makes are just so samey and they have no impact on the game. Which
impact doesn't change it.
Like he doesn't have the...
Pardon, say that again.
No, I'm just saying it's not like he looks at the bench and there's not a different kind of player on there. It's he often has a lot of good options on the bench, but it is very kind of similar changes. Right. It's Bakayoko for Drinkwater. It's Zappacosta for Moses. It's maybe bring Pedro on at left wing back, but it's. Yeah. I just don't really see much innovation, and I find it strange because we pretty much won the title on the back of him doing this innovative 3-4-3. Yeah. Now the whole world plays it, and yet this season we're not really seeing that same kind of manager.
No. Yeah, it is weird. Maybe at the time, because I kind of feel when there's more pressure on Conte, then that's when the innovation kicks in. That's when it's like, okay, I'm not gonna react. I'm gonna take the ascendancy, and this is why I kept saying. A lot of people, I think this is why I kind of got popular, basically, because I was saying that. I think once we beat Manchester United, I kept saying that, we've won the league now. The title's ours this year. I predicted we were going to thrash United 4-0 before we did beat them 4-0. And then I think that's how I kind of slowly got a bit popular. But, this is, I don't know, Arsenal really, thank God for them beating that performances. I really think that's what really helped kick that tactical innovation in place. But, a lot of people... I don't know. I'm even seeing a few comments. Maybe I need to stop looking at them. But, Nini, you hate Conte. Oh, what's Conte supposed to do when the board didn't back him? I don't understand why people's at the extent of flexible thinking goes as far as that. It's like literally right in front of you. It's like they never take any nuance into play. If it would be completely different, for example, we've been getting, we got beaten by your, cities, whatever, but we've only played City once. We're not playing them 6 times in a year, but I can justify, okay, I understand why we've lost this game. We've dropped points against bottom half teams where
West Ham, Palace,
we haven't got points against the Evertons. The frustrating thing is that when we played your Liverpools and Arsenals, where I felt they were games we should have won, because
Liverpool definitely,
every time we managed to get the balls in the dangerous areas, so we had Hazard facing the goal, not playing his back to goal. We could see that a sense of goal was coming. It took a braver change, like, I'm switching to 3-4-3 now. That's what I mean, because then, you can then take off another guy to revert back to 3-5-2. And this is the kind of weird thing, because I think last season especially, how often would we see Conte revert to a 3-5-2? I don't necessarily understand why it's become the big game tactic, because I kind of think Conte's in a way ruined it, because I remember before Hazard and Morata were playing close to each other. Now recently Hazard's always behind Morata all the time.
Yeah.
And I think this is why Morata's been struggling in terms of build up play and linking up, because no one's close to him anymore. He's kind of isolated by himself in a way. And I think I don't know why Conte has necessarily done that. I think maybe it's because he's thinking maybe Hazard is getting marked too easily, with him dropping deeper. Then I don't know. I'd have to look into it much more deeper. But I didn't. This 3-4-3. I don't understand why it doesn't get utilized as much. And I don't know. Some of the substitutions never affecting the course of a game. I don't know. Honestly, I keep saying I don't know. I sound like a retard. It's just like I don't understand why logical things to me just seem so far fetched.
Yeah, I mean, and even sort of to the point where we kind of, I think we sort of saw a bit of Kante and Drinkwater in midfield, and then, don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm ever going to be the world's biggest Danny Drinkwater fan, but I mean, they actually kind of sort of balanced the team out, and they actually let people attack, and and yet we haven't actually seen that since, which I find quite strange considering we've spent quite a lot of money on Drinkwater. He's obviously got a good engine. No, for me, he's a 6 and 7 out of 10 in most things. He's a good passer, he can tackle, he works hard, but he works really well with Kante, and Kante obviously is the key to the midfield. So why don't we just play this 3-4-3 and chuck more offensive players going forward and just let Kante and Drinkwater sit?
That's more than enough. The back. It's not as if the guy in the middle of the back three pushes up. He doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
He plays deep behind the other guys even. So it's like how much more. How tight you need to keep things. Especially if you're playing West Ham and Palace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think obviously you lose some creativity with Drinkwater and Kante, but I think what you gain is I think we just look a bit more balanced. We're not going to go and destroy teams and tear teams up this season. I think that's probably become quite apparent. At least it should be apparent to most people now that we're not going to blow people away unless Stoke, make 20 changes to their team and we go and absolutely batter them. But I'd be quite happy just to see a nice sort of comfortable midfield with some more attacking threat. Let Alonso get forward more, let Moses get forward more. Keep Hazard wide, keep Morata up top, keep whoever's playing on the right. Just keep people further forward. I think we do have a tendency just to drop quite deep. I think you're right in terms of some of these games where we're seeing this formation. But it's up to Conte to decide. He obviously looks at the team and determines the kind of right formation. But I think at least for the sort of the short term, I think the most balanced midfield that we have probably Drinkwater and Kante with. I think Fabregas coming on last 10-15 minutes because I think that's when he's most effective. That's when you can chase a game. But
exactly.
Sometimes when it starts, it's difficult to get that little bit of creative burst that I think he's really good at providing, sort of towards the end of games. So to me, at least you've got something resembling a plan B if you bring Fabregas on.
Exactly.
I think when he starts, if he's not influencing the game, it's very hard to change direction.
And it helped us often last season when Fabregas was
so much. It's such a huge change in so many games. I remember, I think it might have been the Watford game where he came on and played that ridiculous pass through to Costa.
One of the best passes.
Those sorts of things, particularly against tired opponents. I think Fabregas is about as dangerous a player as you're going to get in world football.
Yeah.
But as I said, playing him from the off, and if he's not dictating the game, I think particularly now he's getting a little bit older and he's losing a little bit more mobility.
Yeah.
Teams will just put an athletic player on him and just close him down, and that really takes him out of the game. But later in the game, I think you're right. Last season, huge game changer. I think he could do it again this season, but Conte seems to have decided that he's no longer a super sub and he's a starter. So
but I don't know. I think because I did this a new segment on my channel, a player rating segment, and I had to watch the Arsenal game again, and I really noticed Fabregas's qualities a lot more, especially defensively. Now, I did find it interesting immediately because in that game against Arsenal, Conte used Fabregas on the left and Bakayoko on the right, and I don't think I've ever seen that happen before. And I think with that ability in a way, Fabregas was kind of box-to-box-ish, like box-to-box, in terms of his play style in a way in that game. Looking at the stats afterwards, his defensive contribution was ridiculous. His heat map, he was covering literally the whole side of the left-hand side, defensively, deep areas, further up as well. I don't know. I've always felt that he is a bit underrated because he isn't necessarily the fastest. I feel that, exactly. But I think really Fabregas does. There's a difference between Fabregas being tired, like in the Roma game, and not being able to close down that run. But the difference between, Fabregas being fully fit, and I think a fully fit one. I think the great thing about him is his positioning. I don't think anyone really notices that. I think if you were to tell me who's better defensively out of your Pirlos and Cruises, Fabregas is much more better defensively. Your Pirlos and Cruises, they don't really put in much tackles in a game. There's a reason why Casemiro is playing behind Modric, and that's how he's got a career at Madrid. And there is a reason why Conte used Vidal and Pogba's and Marquinhos around your Pirlos. But I think with Fabregas, he's a lot more mobile than those two players. But yeah, I think one more point that really frustrates me with Conte too is this taking off Eden Hazard all the time. I've never seen that before. I get to me, it sounds me that he's that worried that if any small thing happened to Hazard, everything collapses. I think that's literally the only reason why he's extremely cautious this season.
The kind of the really weird thing and the perhaps slightly eerie thing here is that before we sold Arjen Robben to Real Madrid, one of the main reasons that Robben suggested that he wanted to leave the club was that he was always the player subbed off. And I mean, given obviously Madrid's very, very long-standing interest in Hazard, and Conte is now starting to do the thing where, and you know, not even the last 3 minutes when we're 6-0 up or whatever, you know, drawing a game when you need your best player, taking it with like 15 minutes to go. That for me is a very, very strange similarity to how we lost Arjen Robben. I mean, you know, again, I think Arjen Robben is one of the best Chelsea players I've seen. Even when he played 2 games a season, he basically was a match winner every time he played. Obviously, went on to have an absolutely incredible career elsewhere. Hopefully, you know, one of the players that I really wish we would have kept a hold of. But looking at the similarities, between Mourinho's treatment of Robben, always subbing him off, and Conte now looking to bring Hazard off all the time. And particularly, again, this kind of weird thing with Real Madrid. I don't like I'm very weird about some sort of historical kind of things. I think that, you know, some things do actually, history often repeats itself. And I would hate that to be one of the things that Hazard is like, you know what, he's starting to bring me off quite a bit. Maybe I should go play for Real Madrid. Yeah,
of course. I mean, I think the Arsenal game is when I really had enough, because I thought the main reason why, I mean, this is the thing. We're seeing times where Hazard is not even playing in a game, so he's rested for other games, which has never happened throughout his Chelsea stay so far. And the Arsenal game where he was rested in the previous game specifically for this game, to then be taken off in the 75th minute, I couldn't understand it. I really couldn't understand it.
And it's one of those things where after the game, you're like, oh yeah, Hazard picked up a knock, but with 10 minutes to go, the adrenaline going through his body. I mean, he's a professional footballer. He's not like a pub player, you know, where it's going to affect him. I'm fairly certain he could get through another 10 minutes. You know, I think that for me is quite strange that unless he's at a very, very serious risk of being injured for 6 months, which I don't think a little kick to the calf is going to do.
A Luiz type of thing where, you know, he's been sustaining a knee injury for how long? Then I'd understand.
I mean, it's always the same thing. You can tell that these players that need to have their time managed. I mean, Luiz has been playing with that gigantic white strapping on his knee for God knows how long now. Bakayoko was the same when he first started playing.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but exactly, Bakayoko too. But it really does make me hate Aguero even more. Because I used to really like him before.
I can't stand him at all. It's the reason I don't like David Silva. I think he's a great player, but you know, sort of one of those where I can't fully appreciate him because he's such a sort of dirty kind of player, and he's always sort of doing the little plays and that.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that Aguero one, I mean, knees. I mean, it was purely malice in that tackle.
Not the first time he's done it either, is it? And then remember one in the FA Cup? Was it FA Cup semi-final?
Yeah, that was it, the semi-final. Yeah, I mean, I love to read in the future that maybe there was something between Aguero or Luiz, or maybe Luiz was fortunate where anytime Aguero was angry, he just happened to be the guy there to take his anger out. You know, I'm starting to think that's the case because it just seems too weird. But I don't know. I think, and maybe another thing in regard, and actually, you know, there's another argument in regards to Conte that people make, and that's that if he got the players he wanted, things would be different. And you know, we like to be objective all the time, and I'm thinking really the targets Conte really wanted. You know, I'm not thinking of your Van Dijks and stuff, because if they're playing, they're not helping us get more points. Yeah, we might stop 1 or 2 extra goals going in, but that's it really. But I think the players that Conte really wanted was a guy in midfield that can get goals. You know, your Nainggolan's, Toliso's, for example, and wing back options. Really, I think the left wing back in Sandro. So really, when people say if Conte got his players, you know, being my objective self, I won't even use the likes of your, you know, Oxlade-Chamberlains and Candravas and players like that. Even though and Llorente's, even though Conte wanted them, they're not going to improve the team. But the actual players that could have done it, your Sandros and Toliso's, I think Toliso's in this midfield beside Kante and Sandro's on the left hand side. Do I really think that, you know, we would be, you know, let's say like 2 points behind Man City right now? I really don't think that would be the case. I think I keep making this point, you know, it's not formation, it's how you use the system. For example, you can use 3-4-3 and how many different ways you want to use it.
Yeah.
But I kind of think the bottleneck can be in the way Conte has his teams playing in a way. I think if your plan every single time is to play quick balls to the strikers or the guys in the middle, and then the wing backs have to support them by making the late runs. If that's always going to be your number one way of attacking, breaking down teams, then after a while, as we're seeing at the Norwich game, I mean, I couldn't believe the manager coming out to say that he knew once we matched the system against Chelsea, we were going to have a very good chance, and he was disappointed they couldn't win the game. This is a 13th place team that have won 9 games. They've lost more than they've won this season. Now, when you're hearing mid-table championship teams feeling confident because tactically they knew that once you stop Chelsea doing this, you've got a good chance, that's when I start to get a bit scared now. And I really think that my issue has always been with Conte, you know, change how we break down teams and attack. I mean, that's one of the amazing things about Guardiola. Yeah, they have that, that set routine in terms of those low-driven crosses inside the box, but in Guardiola, he knows how to break down teams. That can be from, maybe telling the centre backs to spread out really wide so they can, make it harder for opposition teams to, press them high, for example. All those types of things. That's what I mean. And I think with Conte, it's kind of like your Mourinho's, where I think this is why they always stress that they need world-class players, because, they rely on that individual ability to help them out in a decisive moment, because I know their systems. For example, I always say, if Conte and Mourinho were at Tottenham, would Tottenham be in the Champions League with them? No, they wouldn't be. They wouldn't be anywhere near that. And I think that's always the main thing. So this is why I stress, maybe this is why I feel we need a different type of manager for a different style. And I think really for anyone that, I think this stream's really touched upon every single thing in regards to Chelsea. I think that point we made earlier about, obviously, how defensive teams are and how teams really don't care about possession anymore. You really have to be extreme when it comes to breaking them down. I think that's going to be the future, really. And so, for the big teams, that's what we need to lead towards. I think Chelsea have created the formula inadvertently with the youth in terms of, how multifaceted they all are, how they're all comfortable in any area on the pitch, how they're comfortable playing under pressure when they're getting pressed by opposition teams. All you need to do is sign a few world-class players around them, and we've got a formula that could, it will be challenging for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, some really good points there. I think the one thing that I would like to touch on is this. There is an Italian coach or an Italian author who writes a lot of coaching manuals called Massimo Lucchesi. Okay. And he wrote a book in, I think, 2000. I think it's 2000, called Coaching the 3-4-3. And if you actually look through this, there's loads of kind of diagrams of attacking play and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's so poignant to how Conte coaches, has been led to believe that Conte is very much they call them systems of play, or they call them patterns of play in the book, where very simple one that probably people recognise is centre back to wing back passes the ball round to the corner to the forward. That's something that we've done for absolutely ages. This is in the book that's 18 years ago, 2000, that this guy has created this. And Conte very much sticks to, in terms of his coaching, these kind of set plays of how you move the ball at the pitch. There's not very much room for any kind of expression. I think this is why, particularly, I mean, again, I think, every single Premier League team now has a detailed scouting team that has video analysis and in various, metrics and whatever. They will realise these patterns of play. I mean, very famous that Andre Villas-Boas scouting report against Newcastle that got leaked. You can see the level of detail on set pieces. He goes here, he does this. Teams have this ability to do that now. And I think what we've seen this season, and probably towards the back end of last season as well, where we got into a bit of a grind in terms of winning games, is teams now know that we have a maybe set 4 or 5 moves to get the ball on the pitch, and they're just basically, all they're doing is they're looking for triggers. Okay, pass the ball to Alonso. Okay, someone mark Morata because he's probably going to put the ball around the corner. And what you'll see now, particularly from season on season, is from Moses and Alonso, is their passing accuracy has gone down massively just on percentages, because their teams know where the ball's going to go. And when you're so rigidly coached to play in set patterns, and everything is done in this kind of very rigid Italian manner, you're right. By the time you get into the final third or get the ball up there, or by the time it's the 75th minute and it's still 0-0, they don't really know what to do with the ball, because they're not, that kind of plan A hasn't worked. And I think that's really what we're seeing this season. Is I don't want to say that the team's overcoached. I mean, they are probably to an extent overcoached in terms of how things happen, but it's the reason why I think people struggle to play with Hazard is because he's one of the only players really that has that ability to play off the cuff. It's why Fabregas works well with him. It's why Morata, when he was confident, was playing quite well with him. But other players, You know, you just see Alonso just doing the same thing. Moses is doing the same thing. The two midfielders will be doing the same thing, regardless of what point of the game we're in, whether we're chasing the game, whether we need a goal. And I think it's led to us becoming quite stagnant. And the worst thing is, I think we're quite predictable at times. Which I think that's probably the worst thing. And particularly when, I mean, any Premier League team now will have this kind of analysis already before a game. And, you know, I said you've got a load of really fit athletic players in the Premier League. It's not too difficult to just say, okay, close down this piece of space, keep this piece of space closed, just watch for these particular passing patterns. You know, most Premier League teams can sort it out. And I think particularly when you look at the Palace game, West Ham game, and even Burnley first game of the season when they beat us, we really struggled to get the ball out from the back or move the ball at all. And I think the teams have, I don't want to say they've figured us out, because they haven't figured us out completely. We still have some kind of tricks up our sleeves, but I mean, it's a lot more difficult than it was last season.
Yeah, of course. And I think this is the thing, you know, we've seen signs of this since last season. I think, you know, the Spurs performance, even though we did beat them, I think they really started to give teams the blueprint. And that was obviously press defenders, leave Kale on the ball, and obviously man mark the defenders, because then we struggle to play out, because the wing backs got to play such a support role where it's like, oh, okay, we can't run until this thing's happened right now. This is why. And really, it's always kind of baffled me, because I was really comparing Moses, and this is a side up, I was comparing Moses and Walker last season. I noticed that Walker had 500 more touches of the ball compared to Moses. And if you really looked at Spurs, one area that they're really amazing at was the flanks, you know.
Yes.
And for some, even you'd think if you're using a wing back system, you know that the minute your wing backs aren't in the game, you're kind of screwed tactically, because then you're opening yourself to being, you know, pressed high and all these overloads being created against you in your own defensive half. Maybe, I think actually this is maybe Conte decided to use this like straight back five in a way. It's you know, a compact back five, but it's like the back three are so compact and tight with each other. And then, you know, this is when it got too negative and we got Preston even easier. And I don't know. I think definitely a different tactical change is needed. And okay, cool. You sent me a link to something which I'll definitely buy after this.
No, I just remember there's a book that I'd recommend to buy. So just want to ping that just for.
Oh, you know what? I actually screenshot this earlier. I think I saw you put it on Twitter or somewhere. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, I'll buy one afterwards. Yeah, exactly. Because that's one area I actually want to really, you know, delve into a lot more. You know, the tactical stuff in terms of how systems work and stuff like that. And I like to start getting into, you know, understanding how training sessions are used in a way to, you know, coach teams to do this, do that. I think that's an interesting thing. But I mean, this has really been an epic. I think in the next 6 minutes, it's going to be like 2.5 hours or 2 hours. So I think in the next 5 minutes, I think we should, you know, really close this live stream. Right, yeah, definitely. But yeah, I mean, really, do you have any, you know, finishing words really for the stream?
I mean, the last thing I'd say is I think the interesting thing that people get kind of hang up in formations in terms of how they go on paper. And the one thing I'd say, particularly just to what you've said there, is, you know, for example, the 3-4-3, people think, oh, super attacking, you've got 7 players ahead of the ball. If you just shift 2 players back in each position, you're actually playing a 5-4-1, which is about as negative a formation as you can possibly get. So, you know, the one thing I'd say is, particularly for people who are looking at formations on television, is that, you know, you very rarely see the team continuing to play in that kind of preset positions. You know, we often play with 5 at the back when we're defending. We often attack with obviously in more of a 3-4-3 shape. So, yeah, that's always just one thing that I always find quite interesting is people go, yeah, but we only play three defenders. It's quite often it's 5, and in most cases it's a bank of 4 in front of that 5 with just one player up top. So, yeah, it's not as attacking, I think, as some people think. But no, apart from that, no, it's been an enjoyable couple of hours actually, Nini. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and yeah, and that's really it. I think really in this stream we literally covered everything surrounding Chelsea, you know. So really, I mean, you know what, I don't know, maybe I might even like download this video later and maybe try and break it up, because I think we've said so many you know, maybe touched on so many important points that, you know, I mean, the average person ain't gonna watch this whole 2 hours. So,
do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, I think I might have to. I can't let this go to waste. But yeah, maybe one more topic before we move. I'm just thinking, obviously we've spoken about Conte. if anyone thinks we don't like him, I'd say
No,
something
it's definitely not the
childish. Come on, you're allowed to critique. Critique doesn't mean hate. If he was just saying things like, Conte's shit, Conte's all this type of stuff, and if we're not acting like Mourinho in regards to talking about Conte, all right. So try and see the difference, but I don't know. I think with Conte, as we've said, really for these managers to really do what they can do, you really need to do everything towards them. I think these type of managers in modern day football will never ever get that in their whole careers. So they need to really understand that pretty quickly if they want to keep getting top jobs. But
the Ferguson way has got a long way ago. It's I think that's going to be the one thing that again, if people take something away from him, my concern with Conte isn't so much him. I think he's actually a fantastic coach and what he's been able to do. Particularly, I mean, if you actually look at the sort of revolution in world football, this whole 3 at the back system pretty much come from him last season. The one thing I get concerned with is that we as a club seem to invest so much into these superstar managers, invest so much into their way of doing things, and I don't think we ever really necessarily think beyond maybe the first 6 months. I think at least for the past 5 seasons, we've been a club that's been very much focused on getting in talent at least sort of 25 and under and trying to mould that and create it. And you've got the concept of resale value with someone like Oscar, or you've got someone like Hazard who develops into a top tier talent. And it's not so much a slight on Conte, but I would just prefer someone in who is just much more aligned with I think the direction that the club is going to be heading.
Of course, and that's actually, maybe we'll end it on this final point in terms of maybe what type of managerial appointment that we probably think would be the next step. Now, here's my thinking basically in terms of the manager is, I'm not necessarily looking for a manager that's going to come in and we're going to be a Champions League winner straight away. I really think with some of the players that we have, and I think the mistakes we've made, where over the past few years we've targeted a lot of players under 23 where they needed at least a year or two a manager that was going to use them in the right system, was going to develop them, help them improve on their weaker points to really, be the top class players. As we're seeing with your Lukaku's and your De Bruyne's and Salah's. I kind of feel that's the approach Chelsea need. We kind of need a stepping stone manager now. I think that, because I think for us to become the club that we're talking about, that won't happen in one season.
No, it's not going to. No.
Need a manager that will slowly change the shift. I think for the season, I think the board will accept that, we can't necessarily expect to win this and win that, because we're not even giving you the money to really invest in what the top class players you want. I mean, club not wanting to spend the 50 on Sandro's. I've been in denial for so long about that, but I think we need a kind of stepping stone manager now. There's one manager I've spoken about, I think you've spoken about too, and there's actually a guy every Monday always has a lot of good points in my channel. Brendan Rodgers. Now, of course, people thinking about Rodgers straight away, you're thinking, what? How can you say Rodgers? I don't know what your issue is against him, but he's the type of stepping stone manager I feel is what the club needs, because he might not necessarily, win us a league title or something, but he'll put us in the right direction. He'll steer the ship in the right direction where the club have a foundation then to then build and be like, okay, well, we can get this type of manager now, and they can start making movements from then on. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, when you kind of think about the type of manager, if you had a manager who was like Brendan Rodgers but wasn't Brendan Rodgers, I think that they would be. I think he would be quite high on the list of most people. I'm not really sure what the. Maybe it's just the association with Liverpool. I'm not too sure, but I mean, that potentially is what people are looking at. But I think you're right in terms of almost a manager to kind of kickstart the culture that you want. He's already worked at the club. He's still got very close ties with the academy. He understands the academy approach here. I think the key thing for me would be that if you get someone in of Brendan Rodgers, or maybe looking at one of these sort of young German managers who are coming through, that seem to think about football in a slightly different way, like using young players, like developing talent. But for me, the key would be to give them or make them have someone like a Joe Edwards or a Jody Morris on the bench, and actually not just there for kind of decoration, but as a serious person that they work to. Because I mean, let's be perfectly honest, they are two of the best coaches at the club, and they play the best football, and they're the most people that are most familiar with the young players. You know, you attach them to a top class manager. If it's Brendan Rodgers or someone, maybe one of these kind of German guys, let them learn the ropes. I mean, why can't we have our own sort of a homegrown manager who actually understands stuff and plays the kind of football that people want to see? People forget. I mean, you said, you know, I love watching the first team, but I mean, if you're talking about actual enjoyment of football and taking it out of context, and you know, it's a very hard thing to do because the Premier League is the Premier League. But if you watch some of the football that the under-18s play, it's just like from another planet. It's powerful, it's fast, it's technical, it's skillful. You know, it's not this kind of powder puff sort of tiki-taka stuff that people are afraid of. It's all that with all kind of the power that you would expect.
But yeah, exactly. You're right. You know, I don't understand this whole thing of let's play good football. Why is tiki taka the only, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, they are an incredible team. They can counter attack. They can play completely on the front foot. They go to Roma and just completely play them off the park. You know, this is a team, particularly under sort of Edwards and 85 Ash, that went to Barcelona when their academy was apparently on the rise, and I think beat them 2-1. And not only that, completely outpassed them during the entire game. We look like the team that had the you know, the sort of La Masia Academy products rather than them, and it's something that we do all the time. You know, I would love to see that kind of at least try to be replicated in the first team. But yeah, I think someone like Brendan Rodgers or you look at Germany. But I think the key thing is it's not a superstar manager that we need. Superstar managers come in with superstar ideas and want superstar players.
Exactly.
At least at the moment, until this new stadium stuff gets sorted, we're not really in the league to be buying you know, Mbappe's and Neymar's for 150 million quid, etc. We've got to kind of live slightly within our means. You can still go and get 70, 80 million pound players, but you know, we're not going to go out and buy a 750 million pound attack just because you know, a big manager wants to go and buy Neymar and Mbappe and maybe Messi when he's 37 or whatever. But yeah, that hopefully I said, I think the direction the club is going, from what I've heard from sort of, you know, people around the club, they are trying to sort of get something in place where they are looking to implement the philosophy. But, you know, again, I think we go back to the point about transfers. Things are set until they're not, and not just in Chelsea. In football, things can be 99% and they can change very quickly. So proof will be in the pudding, but I do hope it's something that we start to see within the next sort of 2-3 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect points as well. And also, just to touch upon my point earlier about, obviously, I think Rodgers is a stepping stone, because again, think about like this, obviously when Mourinho left, Conte came. Now, if you think about the style, you know, the styles of both managers, really, would you say that the squad that Conte inherited was completely alien to any of his footballing philosophies? Or Conte only needs a few players that adds to what he wanted to do, you know? For example, let's say, you know, Mourinho left and we signed someone like a, you know, let's say Guardiola, for example, just for a quick example. Guardiola would lead a lot more work to the team, and he would definitely need at least a season or two to really get the squad he wants. Now, there was no surprise why Conte was able to win the league, the squad to be used, because a lot of the players he already inherited from Mourinho, so it wasn't too hard. Of course, he just had to improve certain areas, so it wasn't as drastic. This is why I think a Rodgers could be okay, because again, him coming, he's not going to be expecting £300 million investment in the summer to really kickstart what he wants to do. He'll be happy to work with what he wants, slowly change things, and then that could be the stepping stone we can use where, let's say, another manager comes where the club want to start putting in money to start, obviously, really taking this new direction to the fullest and start competing properly. Because you know, when a club wants to compete, they put money in. That's how football works.
Yeah, just how it goes.
That's as simple as it is. So when you start seeing that, that's what you can do with a Rodgers. I think it's patience, but you know, a lot of fans, honestly, you know, I've got a lot more faith in fans. You know, really, we do kind of accept whatever. I mean, you know, with how we've been run as a club over the past, you know, more than 10 years, a lot of fans have seemed to be happy with it. So I can't imagine them being too outraged at you know, a completely new direction or a guy like Rodgers coming in. And you know, even in regards to Rodgers, there are some benefits. Number one, he knows the club inside out. He knows everyone there. He understands the system. I think, what you're saying before, that he's well respected too.
Very well respected at Chelsea. Exactly.
I think he was kind of the path. It's just me hypothesizing. I don't fully know, but the likes of your Clements becoming managers and your who was the other guy? Obviously Rodgers himself, and it's the likes of your, you know, Jody Morris will probably end up being a manager too in the future. You know, he was that light for those guys to see.
He was the first one to go and leave the academy. I think he went to Reading or something like that.
Reading first, and then I think it was Swansea afterwards. Exactly. And you know, of course, his style of football does work. I mean, this criticism he got for Liverpool, again, I made this point that people forget context. It's always black and white. No one understands why things happen. They just see that something's happened. The reason why his second spell at Liverpool messed up, because first, think of it. The system he created, you know, obviously having your Suarez, Sturridge, and then obviously introducing a young, you know, 17-year-old Sterling playing up front with them. Cool, obviously, it's courageous to be using the kids.
Yeah.
And also, that's probably, I mean, the most fluid front three I've seen since, you know, Ronaldo, Tevez, and Rooney in the Premier League. That's how amazing.
Well, they were exceptional, yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, a club like Liverpool, they've always been a club where, you know, top four attacks and, you know, bottom half table defensive midfield. Now, you've got to really think those three players alone single-handedly got them close to winning the league. And, you know, they were suiting the system that Rodgers wanted. And why do you think some of the lesser players were looking good in that system? Because they suited the style. Now, you've got to realize next season, Suarez, they don't bring in Sanchez. So you've got to have continued that system that Rodgers was going. Sturridge breaks down. You know, that's the start of him really breaking down and unfortunately not being the top class player he looked like he could be. And then obviously he doesn't get the proper investment in the summer. Then he's forced to tinker because it's like, well, the system I was using last year can't work because I don't have the attack anymore. And now I need to try and find a solution. I'm under pressure. I don't really have the squad to do anything close to what I want to do. And that's why you started to see crazy things like Sterling playing as a wing back and stuff like that. So in a way, this is, I mean, these clubs like your Liverpools and Spurs, I mean, Liverpool have finally seen the errors of their ways now. I think they've definitely capitalized on the fact that, you know, clubs like us and Arsenal aren't spending big money on players anymore. That's why they're getting your Naby Keitas and your Van Dijks. But I think that, you know, he never got any proper investment. But I even seen what he's done with Celtic. I mean, you know, to go 60+ games unbeaten is ridiculous. They try to play football against all the big teams in Europe. And you got to remember, Celtic are probably a championship team. You know, they wouldn't make it in the Premier League, really, in my opinion. So, you know, again, we've been stressing this sport the entire time. It's not about CV managers. It's about obviously suiting what the club want. I said that example about Valverde. This guy only won titles with Olympiacos. Would you think that he'd be getting Barcelona unbeaten in the league this season now if you just base it on his CV? No. But then your football doesn't work like that. So, you know, all I'm saying is people, you know, keep an open mind, really.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the way that I would like to see the club go, I mean, it really shouldn't matter who the manager is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And straight to the point. That's
You should be able to get any manager here who can coach you know, the players in the kind of way that you're looking to go. It shouldn't matter because, you know, the philosophy of the club is dependent on the club. It shouldn't be dependent on, you know, Rodgers or any other manager. It should just be like, okay, can you execute what we're trying to do? We want to bring players in. We want to play this way. We're going to play this shape. We're going to start this from now. Hopefully, in 2 years' time, we're going to have. And the thing is, well, one thing I would say, people kind of response to my article was saying, do you think the club would take falling out of top four? I don't think we will. I don't think the Premier League is that great at the moment where we would actually. No, I mean, like I said, we're 16 points worse off than last season, and we're still third place. So, you know, it's not like it's more competitive, but it's not to the point where I think we completely drop off the face of the earth. So, you know, I think it's definitely manageable. If top four is a target, keep obviously the European football going, and hopefully, you know, in 2 years you actually start seeing some of these players coming into the team, establishing themselves. Your Rubens, people like that, 23, 24, starting to make a bit of a name for themselves. And then you get your Mason Mounts and other people and your Dujons and your Hudson-Odois coming in, hopefully to continue that. And then hopefully we can go out and buy some top players. Your Sandros, maybe go and get a Dybala or go and get someone really quality and start enriching the squad with that kind of talent again. Because, you know, just to sort of to finish up, we're not going to get back to being a top team heading the way we are at the moment. There's no way that the level of player we're attracting at the moment is going to go and beat Barcelona or Real Madrid or whoever consistently in Europe. We might get the odd result. I'm not saying that that's not going to be the case, but I can't see the trajectory that we're on, you know, being one that's going to at least get us to be a top 5 team in Europe again.
Exactly. And you made, I'll say 2 final points. The first one is, you know, you made a fantastic point in your article in regards to, you know, why would top players want to come to the club when there's no stability really in terms of not knowing who the manager is going to be next year? Because you got to realize if you're bringing in someone that's completely different to what you're brought in the first place, that's going to affect your place in the team. I mean, we've seen countless examples of this at Chelsea. I think, you know, I mean, when we've seen players force on managers, for example, this is the reason why Robin stopped playing for us, because Mourinho just couldn't use him in the system. You know, countless examples. That's one of the reasons you get by not having that type of stability too. And the final point I wanted to make, so we can wrap up this stream, is, you know, we need another Ranieri before, you know, your next Mourinho can come in, because that's how it started. Think of it like this, you guys. If Mourinho inherited, you know, 22-year-olds Terry and Lampard, for example, would those guys have been the spine for the team to this day? You know, in terms of how they really helped the team, in terms of, you know, the consistency of the amount of years, that definitely wouldn't be the case at all. And really, this current model at Chelsea, we're really just gonna, the best we'll do is maybe a league title every 3-4 years, and then obscurity in a way. And I just think that is, for a club of our stature, that shouldn't be the solution. But anyway, yeah, Joe, obviously, thanks for coming on. It's been an epic live stream. It's been, always enjoyed talking to you. You know, it's always, you know, flowing ideas, and I'm always hearing new points and, you know, getting new insight as well. So it's always a pleasure.
No, it's been really enjoyable. And as said, generally, if I've got a free evening, more than happy to jump on. Doesn't have to be 3 hours, but more than happy to jump on for half an hour, whatever, just chat about Chelsea. So yeah, always a pleasure. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Definitely. And you guys, again, like I said, in the community tab, there's a link to Joe's article. I suggest you read that afterwards. And afterwards, once this stream's finished rendering, I'm going to put the description with his article in as well. But anyway, you guys, thank you for watching today's live stream. I'm going to release the match preview around 1 p.m. tomorrow. And then, of course, going to the game tomorrow as well. Might release another match vlog. And yeah, you guys, thank you for staying with us for so long. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm EFC. This is Blue Lions TV. Signing out.